Today we are joined by Remi Adeleke. Remi is a former Navy SEAL who was born in Nigeria but had to escape to America at a very young age. He is now acting, directing, and producing films in Hollywood and is an author of several best-selling books. Big thanks to our supporters over at Patreon and Shooting Sir Plus. You can find a link to a newsletter sign-up to save on life-saving gear we use every day in the description of this video. Thanks, and enjoy the show.
Well, Remi, usually a lot of people who have a podcast like this, they'll fly someone out or get together organically. They maybe haven't met each other before, or they're longtime friends, and they'll get to do a conversation like we're doing right now and dive into some questions, and people get to know each other and then share that content. But this is kind of a cool podcast for us because we worked on a project. We worked like 19, 20-hour days for 3 days in a row. We were trying to get a short film pulled together, and we're still wrapping up the tail end of that, but that's going to be super cool when that comes out. So we're excited to actually sit down with you and do a podcast, being that we don't know your entire life story. So we're excited to ask some of those questions, as well as ask questions in regards to what you do professionally today, like what you do for work. But man, we're just stoked that we got to work with you and do some projects and start building some relationship, and then get to sit down and kind of get into who you are. So thank you for being here.
No, thanks for having me, and thanks for working on the film and crushing that. And I know the audience can't see the crew, but got the awesome crew, Chad and Charles here. Appreciate you guys, and Steve, and man, it's been a blessing getting to know you guys and working with you guys. And thank you for having me on this podcast.
Well, thank you. One of the things I was talking with Josh about before we did this is, whenever you came up the first time and we shot the film with you and then you went back, I was like, we didn't get to talk to Remi a lot about his life or like all the things that he's done or anything like that, but just seeing how you like handled yourself before, during, and after the shoot, I was like, technically we don't know you, like someone your whole life, but there's every indication that like he's a good dude. Like Remi seems like a genuinely like kind soul, good person, wants to do right by others, and that's not something you get a lot in this business all the time. So yeah, we're pumped to have you here, and we're pumped to kind of introduce you to our audience and kind of jump into who is Remi Adeleke. So you got a lot of irons in the fire. Do you want to hop in with just like how it all began?
Well, as far as how we got to know him, or should we get into who he is? I think your story is so unique.
Okay. I'm going to cut him off. So there's no such thing as so unique. It can either be unique or it's not. It's either one of a kind or it's not.
I disagree, but
he does this just to get me riled up.
You have a very unique story.
You want me to jump in and ref this thing?
Yeah. Yeah, so why don't you catch us up and our audience up with like what was your upbringing like? Where are you from? Your family? Like what was?
So I was born in Nigeria. My story, I tell people all the time that my story actually starts with my dad's story. My dad was the firstborn son to my grandfather, Chief Adeleke. And because my grandfather had like 9 wives, kept on having daughters with his 9 wives. And then finally my grandmother, who was one of my grandfather's wives, came along and she produced an heir, which was my father, Chief Adebayo Adeleke. And when my dad was about 8 years old, my grandfather died. And so all of the wives and kids dispersed to they were kind of given an allotment of money, and they all kind of dispersed to different parts of Nigeria. And my grandmother brought my father down to the north of Nigeria, down to the south of Nigeria in Lagos. And at the time, there were Christian missionaries there. And not only were they teaching the Bible, but they were teaching science and math and writing and reading and writing and all of the, pretty much Western topics that, we learn in America and Great Britain, so on and so forth. And so my dad, he was a savant. very, very intelligent man. As a matter of fact, before my grandfather was Muslim, so my dad had memorized the Quran by the time he was like 6 or 7 years old. And so because of his intellect, he was able to memorize mathematical equations and books, and he memorized the Bible. I mean, this dude was a kid genius. And fast forward to after he finished high school, whatever the equivalent was in Nigeria at the time, he ended up getting a full ride academic scholarship to London to study architecture and engineering. And in gratitude to the missionaries, he added his name legally, his first name. He changed his first name to John. So his first name, Adebayo, became his middle name, and John became his first name. And so and also he was a chief, as well. And Adeleke means the crown is supreme. And so he had that kind of title and lineage as well. So he still maintained the royal status that my grandfather had passed on to him. So my dad went to London. He studied architecture, engineering, crushed it, full ride academic scholarship, and then after that he stayed in the West. He would bounce back and forth from London to America to establish his businesses, network. He built an engineering firm that was really, really thriving. He befriended and worked with the architect of the World Trade Center. I always pronounce his name wrong. Yamasaki, I believe his name was pronounced. And he just crushed it, man. And I mentioned this in a social media post last week, but the West allots affords those opportunities to be able to start with nothing and then build yourself up in a way where you're amassing great wealth, from hard work, not in a corrupt way. And my dad was actually one of the first black men on the board of the World Trade Center in New York City. He was the first black man on the board of the British Financial Planning Council in Great Britain. And then after a number of years, my dad realized, hey, I need to go back to Nigeria and take everything that I've learned and all of this wealth and establish Nigeria in a better place, essentially set them off in a better place, because a lot of people don't realize this, but Nigeria is very, very rich in resources. You have natural gas, you also have oil in abundance, you also have cocoa, gold, like there's minerals. Even now, China has been signing pacts with a lot of countries in Nigeria, in Africa, Nigeria included, to be able to mine in these places to get, I forgot the lithium battery, the minerals that kind of start out that are utilized to create lithium batteries and other materials and stuff. So Nigeria is very rich in resources. And my dad knew that if Nigeria can be more organized from a business standpoint, then it could be like America. It could be like Great Britain. It could be like Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia and its oil, and it's a very rich country. And so he went back to Nigeria, brought some of his businesses back to Nigeria, established new businesses in Nigeria, and he had spent £8 million in the 70s, I want to say, I'm pretty sure the early 70s, to buy a massive plot of land called Marico. And it wasn't like a bush. It was actually like a small little town. And his goal was to turn that Marico into like a Wall Street, or like an African Wall Street. And he wanted to place the Nigerian World Trade Center at the center of Marico. But there was a military coup after he had paid for this land. And again, I don't know the exact year date, so please don't quote me. And the military government took Marico from him. Yeah, so he went from, and that's the thing about Nigeria, man. Not like here in America. You buy something, you buy your house or whatever it is, a building or a business, it's yours. The government can't come in and take it unless you don't pay your taxes, right? But in Nigeria, it's just like, hey, 1 minute it's yours, you spend all of this money. The next minute, somebody could come along and say, hey, that's mine, And so my dad went to court after the coup. He didn't want to get murdered. And so after everything had subsided and democracy was reinstated, he went to court, fought the government. And then finally, I want to say like after about 9-10 years, the federal government, the Nigerian federal government came in and said, all right, we're not going to give you Marico at this point, but what do you want back? Do you want your money back? Do you want something else back? And there was a lagoon off the coast of Lagos, Ikoyi, Lagos, and it was pretty much a swamp at the time. It was a dirty swamp, but it was, if it was, revitalized, essentially, it was a lagoon. And so my dad said, I want the lagoon. And everybody laughed. I was like, what are you going to do with a lagoon? You can't do anything with a body of water. Why does this guy want a body of water? That's how they say. And he is a fool. And so my dad was like, don't worry about it. Just give it to me. That'll be my compensation. And so the federal government gave him the lagoon. And the reason why he wanted the lagoon was because he wanted to create a man-made island. There were different parts of, I think Heathrow Airport, part of that was dredged, and foreshore was dredged to develop a man-made. Part of it is a man-made island. There were other countries that were starting to do this, and he wanted the lagoon because in his mind, again, he was always very, very far thinking. In his mind, if he created something where there was never something, then no federal government, no state government, no corrupt politician could ever come along and say, this is mine, I discovered it, because it was never there. You can't say, you know what I mean? I put this table here if this table never existed, you know what I mean? Like somebody built this table, this island right here, and put it here, and that's what my dad did. He built this island. So that's when I came along. And so I was born in 82. My brother's a year older than me. He was born in 81. And so I was born in Nigeria. I was born in Lagos, and when I was born in the riches and wealth. We had nannies, we had cars, we had drivers, we had cooks, we had bodyguards. We didn't live in a house. We lived on this lavish compound in Nigeria, on a mansion. I mean, dude, we didn't want for anything. My mom is American. I tell people all the time that my mom and dad's story is a real coming to America story because my mom and dad met in New York City. They fell in love, got married, and she moved to Nigeria with him. And so and the blessing in that was I was born an American citizen abroad. My dad, again, he was always forward thinking. In his mind, he wanted my brother and I to have the opportunity to get into politics one day. And so, he said, he was like, I don't want my kids to have dual citizenship. I just want them to be born Americans because it doesn't make sense for them to have Nigerian citizenship because there's nothing really Nigeria can offer them, but if they have American citizenship, then America can offer them absolutely anything.
Well, that's how my cousin was. My cousin from America married a woman from Sri Lanka and made sure that their kids had U.S. citizenship. So.
And you may not be in politics, but I would argue that you are still influencing the future in the work that you're doing today. And we'll get to that, but I do have another question. You mentioned that Nigeria has a ton of opportunity for wealth. At the time when you were born and living in mansions, you had drivers and everything that you could ever need. Was that rare, or were there a lot of other people that had wealth and the ability to have that kind of lifestyle?
Yeah, so there's either the very rich in Nigeria or there's the very poor.
Okay.
There's no in between. And a lot of the very rich come from the royal class, chiefs, pretty much born into, or sadly, politicians. So here in America, when you have, speaking for myself, growing up in the Bronx, a lot of kids in my neighborhood, what do they see? They see drug dealers, they see rappers, they see athletes, right? And they see, okay, that was the path that led to financial success. And so what do? They go down those paths, like I eventually did. In Nigeria, it's politics. From the time there are kids in Nigeria, go into politics, become a politician. Because you can go into politics poor and come out a billionaire. Sure. Not a millionaire, a billionaire. Sure. And 99% of it is because of corruption. All right? It's all corruption because you'll get governors who will get an allotment of money from the president or Congress, whatever it's called. And let's say good example is in the North recently, and this goes back even way before I was born, but in the North recently, the Nigerian military was fighting Boko Haram, okay? And so the government was giving, I forgot the state, but the government was giving this particular state an allotment of money so that they can go fight. They can get guns, have bullets, all the resources to fight Boko Haram. Well, when that state would get, and I'm just throwing out a random number to kind of give this example, I'm not saying this is an example, the exact number, when that state would get, that governor would get $100 million, hey, here's everything you need to go fight these people. Now, let me reduce the number so people don't say I'm exaggerating. But if that state got $10 million, right, to go fight Boko Haram, and the governor was supposed to disperse it to the people in the military in that area, the soldiers, that by the time the money got to the soldiers to fight, you're looking at like 500,000. Okay. Yeah. 9.5 million went into the pocket of that governor. This is fact across the board. Hundreds of stories about this that people could just Google and look up.
Almost like there's wars going on today where that same thing is happening.
Yeah, no, 100%. Oh yeah, Ukraine, Russia, yeah, no, 100%. And so, that's when I was in school, because we went to private school with kids whose parents were politicians, right? Yeah. But they weren't on the up and up politicians. They were politicians that were doing the same thing. I mean, it was a story that came out, I want to say like 6-7 years ago, the Ministry of Oil woman. She was cutting these side deals because she was cutting side deals with other countries to buy oil because she was in charge of oil, right? And so I'm just again giving an example. People could Google up and look up this story. Oil minister, Nigeria, corruption, and all the articles will pop up. BBC, CNN, and all pop up. And so instead of selling the oil for the set price, which was probably supposed to be, again, just throwing out a random number, for a ship filled with oil, $20-30 million, she was selling it for $10 million. And working that deal, and then the ship would disappear, and then she would put that $10 million in her pocket. She was a billionaire. And then when she got caught, she jumped on, or when she was about to get caught because somebody was tipping off, hey, the government's on you, she jumped on a flight to the UK, said she had cancer, and when the government said, hey, come back because you need to stand trial, she's like, no, I can't because of my cancer, I got to stay here. She was trying to seek asylum in the UK. And you get a lot of Nigerian politicians, even presidents, that after they finish their tenure, they ain't staying in Nigeria. They going to the UK, they going to the US, they going to other places because they know, when the roosters come home, somebody's going to end up in jail, and they're not trying to be there.
So like as a kid growing up in this environment, did you see through the veil? Did you see?
No, because I was small. I mean, I didn't leave Nigeria until I was 5. So, I'm just, hanging out on the compound, going to school, the world is big. So that's at that time. So I'm not conscious of any of that stuff. Yeah.
You said your mom was American.
Yeah.
How did your dad and your mom meet? If he's doing all this stuff back in Nigeria.
Yeah, so my dad, he would travel a lot, and he had business partners all over the world. He had, as I said, one of his really good friends was the architect of the World Trade Center. And so he was always in New York, and because he was on the board of the World Trade Center, and he was also trying to establish a World Trade Center in Nigeria in Lagos, he was always back and forth. So essentially one day or month, week, he was in New York for business, and he saw that there was an exhibit on Yoruba art because we're Yoruba. So that there's many prominent tribes in Nigeria, but the 3 most well-known are Igbo, Hausa, and Yoruba. Yoruba is like probably the biggest, the biggest number of Nigerian, the biggest tribe in Nigeria. And so we're known for our art. Yoruba is known for their art, beautiful art, Benin, sculptures, paintings. Like, it's, again, Nigeria is some Nigerians believe that Nigeria is the cradle of civilization. of all the resources, natural resources, but the people are just so artistic, so intelligent. You know, look at immigrants who thrive in America. Nigerians are typically the doctors, lawyers, engineers in America. That their parents. I have a cousin who's he's a first generation American. Both his parents are Nigerian, and he's a triple major at MIT. Biology, engineering, and math.
That level of education is kind of the standard in Nigeria.
That's the standard.
Right?
If you have, it's the standard in Nigeria and America for Nigerians. If you're a Nigerian American and you have a bachelor's, that's equivalent to a GED. No, seriously. Like, you have a bachelor's degree, you think that is enough? No.
They're not wrong. A bachelor's degree is a joke. I can confirm I have one. I did nothing for it. It was so easy.
Hey, I didn't say it. So, like, you have to have a minimum of a master's degree, and then, like, that's the bare minimum. And then from there, like, your parents expect you to have a doctorate or be a doctor or be a lawyer. Like, all my Nigerian friends are, doctors. As a matter of fact, I got a buddy of mine. He worked on plane. He was one of the producers and co-financers on a plane movie. And it's so funny because we met on set. Like, I didn't even know he was a producer. He's a Nigerian guy, and Nigerian American. His parents were from Nigeria, so he's first generation American. And we got to talk. I looked at his name. I was like, dude, you're like, see that? Like, you're Nigerian. He's like, yeah, man. And I said, dude, and you working on this movie? You're a producer? He's like, yeah. And we went to dinner one night, and he's like, I'm a heart surgeon. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, man, I just always love movies, you know what I mean? And just love making, I got my own private practice, and I'm a heart surgeon. So this dude is a movie producer, and then he's also a heart surgeon. And like I said, all my Nigerian friends that I know, especially like first generation Americans, and even Nigerians that came from Nigeria as like small kids, and they're Americans now, all of them doctors, engineers, entrepreneurs, and that's the standard. That's what parents expect of their kids, nothing less, especially because in Nigeria, you don't have those opportunities to rise from nothing. Like, you could work 10 times hard, you could put in all the work and still end up at the bottom and losing everything. And so the parents instill in their kids, you come to America, hey, bare minimum master's degree, bare minimum you're crushing school. You're not gonna be out there in the streets. You're doing, 20 hours a week studying on top of going to school. And if not, you are a disgrace to the family. You are a disgrace. So it's pretty brutal, I think in Indian community in America is the same, and even some Asian communities in America are the same as it relates to that type of standard. But because we understand, the parents understand the opportunities that America provides that their countries don't provide. So sorry. My dad was here for a. I went on a tangent, but with the art piece, a lot of Nigerians believe that a lot of Nigerians believe that Nigeria is a cradle of civilization because of the intelligence and the resources and the art that comes out of Nigeria. So the Metropolitan Museum of Natural History they were putting on an exhibit on Yoruba art. And so my dad happened to be in New York for business. My mom has always, she's always loved the arts, musicals, plays, artwork. You name it, she's been fascinated by the art, and she always loved African art. So my mom found out about this Yoruba exhibit, and so she went to Metropolitan Museum of Natural History the same day. My dad went to Metropolitan Museum of Natural History, and my mom was staring at a piece of art. My dad saw her, he hit on her, and then my mom's this like snappy New Yorker, so she's just like, get out of here, man. Like, like, what are you doing? Like, get out of here. And then he meets her at another piece of art, and then he's like, I'm a chief in the U. And he had a British, my dad could change his accent because again, he was speaking pidgin when he was in Nigeria, but he went to school in London. Again, he had that mind that could pick up on things. So he would speak in his suave British accent to my mom, and I am a chief in Nigeria. And so my mom's like, yeah, whatever, get away from me. So then my mom goes to another piece of art, and he just happens to, be there. And then, they went on a date. She was charmed. They went on a date, and then they got married 5 months later. Crazy. And yes, it was real quick. And my dad was like, hey, I'm in Nigeria, and so my mom and my dad. Well, my mom moved to Nigeria with my dad.
Huh. So how long were you living there? You said you moved to the Bronx at some point?
Yeah. So what happened was we were in Nigeria. My dad was developing the island, and the island had been fully formed. Right after the island had been fully formed, he signed contracts with McDonald's, Marks and Spence, other businesses to have offices on the island. The World Trade Centers, Nigerian World Trade Center, where people from around the world were supposed to come and do business. The construction had started on that, and then the Lagos state government came in after they saw that the island worked and was functional, and this crazy idea that my dad had was actually thriving. The Lagos state government came in and said the federal government was never supposed to award my dad the swamp as compensation. So they conveniently waited. And this is the corruption, but this is the type of corruption you're dealing with. You know what I mean? They conveniently waited until my dad. My dad put the 8 million pounds aside that was, that he spent initially. I mean, he spent millions of dollars. He hired Dutch engineers, from the Netherlands to come dredge a foreshore. Westminster dredging company. That's millions of dollars. You know what I mean? And then construction workers. That's millions. He leveraged all of our assets, all of our family assets and money. So much so that my mom would say to my dad, hey, Adebayo, like, you need to put money in America because I don't trust this corrupt system. And if what happened to you, America, happens again, we're going to be penniless. And my dad was so loyal to his country and so driven. He was just such, and that's where I get my drive from my dad. He was just so driven, just like when he had a vision, it's like, yo, we're going to get this thing done. And he was so loyal that ended up being his demise, because when the Lagos state government came in and said that, you can't, this belongs to us, we lost everything. We lost everything. And my dad, he had, and because of all our assets were wrapped up in it. And so my dad went to court, and he started fighting the Nigerian government in the court system, the Lagos state government in the court system. And then he died 3 weeks later, mysteriously. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds pretty mysterious.
Oh,
like
yeah.
what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay. So two questions
Yeah.
before we jump into your father's death. Did anyone ever pay for what they did to him?
No. So I have a half brother, because my dad was married years before he met my mom, and he's a lawyer, and he's been fighting the government since '87, and they offered him $8 million, like 5 years ago, but he turned it down because it's like, no, like 8 million pounds, and pounds is more than dollars, you know what I mean? 8 million pounds, then you adjust for inflation, and then you add on all the money, then interest, then you add on all of the money that he spent to dredge and all that other stuff. And now that island's worth billions of dollars. It's a multi-billion-dollar property. The richest Africans some of the richest Africans in the world, not Nigeria, in the world, have compounds of property on. Now they changed the name from Lagoon City to Banana Island. Dangote, who's the richest African on the planet, has a compound on, but now it's called Banana Island. And a lot of like famous rappers and singers, Nigerian rappers and singers and politicians, they all have compounds on. It's like the Beverly Hills. And the interesting thing is, my dad never intended for it to be a residential haven for the rich. He intended it to be a place where people from around the world could do business, and a place where that could help generate and stimulate the Nigerian economy, so that people up and down the food chain could have jobs and work, and more business can come to Nigeria. And it was a better structure in the way business was done. That was his goal. He wasn't doing the island for himself, because it's like, okay, yeah, I could develop an island and put houses on it and make billions of dollars and then, kick back and relax. My kids never had to worry about work. He could have done that easily. Yeah. But for him, it was about, hey, Nigeria has so much potential, and I want Nigeria to be a better place. This is my vision. And yeah, I'll make money. Like, obviously, he's a businessman. He was going to make money in doing it. But it was going to be more of a benefit for the people of Nigeria than it was going to be for himself. And to this day, there's, going into my father's death, there was our family bodyguard, my dad's personal security, to this day is the manager of Banana Island. Some of my dad's good friends, generals, I won't mention their names here. One of them is still alive. He's in his 90s. Billionaire, by the way, a general in the military, billionaire, by the way. He played a role in all of this as well. And these were people who were my dad's friends. So he was betrayed. And ultimately what happened was he was super stressed out, went for a walk, and when he was stressed, he would go for walks alone. And he went for a walk down off the compound down the street, and our neighbor, who was an Indian guy, it wasn't a Nigerian guy, he was an Indian guy, he had a dog. The dog was always nice to my dad, never had any issues. The dog broke free and bit my dad. Okay, so that's part one. My dad didn't contract rabies, but in order to make sure he didn't get rabies, he went to the hospital and he got medication. What they found on the autopsy was that the medication was, it was bad medication, essentially it was poison. So that's what ultimately killed him. The medication is what killed him.
That doesn't just happen.
That doesn't just happen.
Are hospital systems there in Nigeria also overseen by the government to some degree as well?
Overseen by the government. A lot of corruption. A lot of nepotism. Hey, I'm so and so's son, and I barely made it through med school, but I'm so and so's son. Give me a job.
And there's more money to be made
There's more money to be made. That's why here's a crazy thing. Wealthy Nigerians, well, Nigerians who have the means, when they get sick with cancer, kind of like I told you with the lady, the oil minister lady, they don't get treatment in Nigeria because of that, because of how corrupt and jacked up the medical system is. They fly to the UK. They fly to the U.S. if they can get to the U.S. and they get their medical treatment there, and then they go back. My half brother is a good example of that. He has brain cancer. He's had brain cancer for a number of years, and he has to wear a helmet now because they had to take off part of his skull and then go in and stuff. He ain't getting that done in Nigeria. So he gets that done in the in the UK. As a matter of fact, when I was in the UK the last time, we went to dinner a couple times together because he was still getting treatment. And then, once he's stable, then he goes back and fights the government in the courts in Nigeria. Yeah. So it's crazy, man. It's like, so that's what ultimately, led to my father's passing. And he took the medication, our maid set the bath for him, and then she told him the bath was ready. He went in, never came out, and they found him dead in the bathtub. And so yeah, man. So that's how it all happened.
You were 5 at the time?
I was 5, yeah.
What did, right off the bat, was everyone super suspicious?
Oh, 100%. But what my mom was telling my dad from the get, hey, my mom's a New Yorker. She's the streets, you know what I mean? Not just that, but she's street smart, you know what I mean? And so my mom was like, yo, we need to put money here, but you also need to protect yourself. There was a lot of crazy stuff that happened to my mom. Another thing, I want to be careful about going down this road because, people might be like, but a big thing in Nigeria, I'll just say this, people can look it up, big thing in Nigeria is juju. So that's it's a big thing, black magic, crazy stuff. So my mom was having stuff happen to her in Nigeria where she was like, I'm out of here, but I don't want to be here. Like, this is crazy. She had a horse. We had a horse, and a horse, horses don't bite. Typically, correct me if I'm wrong. You know what I mean? The horse just goes up to her and bites her breast, and then it was just weird, demonic type stuff that was happening to me, that was happening to my brother, and that was happening to my dad, and so I don't want people to say, oh, he's talking about you to discredit my story. But there was crazy stuff happening. And it was prompting my mom to say, listen, Bio, like, you need to protect yourself. So we all knew what was going on. But again, my dad was just so driven, such a very focused person. And I think that at times, like that's something that gets me in trouble sometimes, is that like I could be so focused that on something. It's benefit me as it relates to being a SEAL and other things that I do in business, stuff like that. But I could just be so focused on like this mission that I forget to kind of look around.
You get that tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of like what I said to you guys when I apologized to you guys when we were after the shoot, where because we were texting and I was like, well, what about this? What about that? And then Brad spoke to me. He's like, dude, like these guys have been crushing it. Like you can't be asking. I was like, oh crap, like he's right. You know what I'm saying? Because I was just so driven that it wasn't that I wasn't thinking about other people, but it was just that I wasn't aware that, hey, like Chad, Charles, like all of these dudes were freaking and they're smoked and they freaking gotta go home and this and that. And it's like, yo, you gotta dial it back. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I'm just being real, but that comes from my dad. And like I said, it's benefited me at times, but it's also been a curse for me at times. Sure. You understand what I'm saying? And so that was my dad's downfall. Again, a big part of it was his loyalty to his people.
He loved them.
Yeah. He loved his people, and he knew the potential that Nigeria had. You know what I'm saying?
So immediately, did your mom take charge and say, we don't have the money and we can't be here anyway? Or did you leave? Or were you guys in fear for your life? I mean, obviously you were young and may not have been able to see the full scope of the scenario, but.
My mom was just like, we out.
Okay.
She was just like, my mom's like, I'm American. You're American. Your brother's American. There's nothing here for us. We're
not sticking around to see what happens.
Yeah. And my half brother, kind of, being the firstborn son, kind of stepped in. My half brother's name is John. He stepped in and kind of took on the mantle of chief, and trying to lead the family and work everything out with the court system. Which again, it's 87, going close to 40 years now.
Were there any other attempts on your family after that?
No, not on my brother, because here's the thing. And I was when I went to Nigeria to finish writing my book Transformed, and I was with one of my dad's mentees, and he was telling me, explaining more to me from his perspective and what he saw and everything, and he explained it perfectly. He was like, listen, your brother, your half brother John, from the time he was 6, he was sent to boarding school in the UK. That was what was supposed to happen to me and my brother before my dad died. As a matter of fact, my mom fought my dad on it for a long period of time. Because like, I'm not just sending my kids off to another country to go to boarding school. He's like, but this is what we do. Like, they'll have a better education in the UK. And so what my dad's mentee was telling me was that your brother was sent to the UK in boarding school when he was 6 or 5 or 6, whatever. He was educated in the UK system. And now, and he went to college. He went all the way, I mean, from elementary school all the way to college, all the way to law school. All of that was done in the UK. So here you have him finishing his law degree, passing whatever the bar is. I don't know what it all is in the UK. And then he's essentially a Yankee coming back to Nigeria. And he's trying to, as a young man, educated in the UK, trying to fight an African government. And they like, to him, to the Nigerian government, it's like, throwing rocks at a tank. They're like, this guy can't do it. What can this guy do? He can't do it. You know what I mean? And so it was just like, whatever, get out of here. Like, he's not a threat to them. They ain't got no reason to take him out. He's not, and if they do, that just highlights them more. That just highlights what happened to my dad more. So like, let the boy play with his toys. You know what I mean? He ain't gonna be able to do anything. And so, yeah, man. So there was no real threat. My dad was the threat, because he was connected. He was there's a African king, a Yoruba king, like the king of the Yorubas. It's called, and I might be pronouncing it wrong, Aluwalu or something like, or Oluwalu or something like that. People can look it up or Google it, but that person is considered the king of the Yorubas. That was my dad's best friend, and a lot of people don't know this, but there's a lot of Yoruba influence and Nigerian influence in Brazil, because with the slave trade, a lot of Nigerians went to, and a lot of Nigerians enslaved other Nigerians, other tribes and stuff, and sold them, and then to Europeans, and then Europeans brought them to Brazil. Okay, and so the Oluwalu goes back and forth sometimes between not living there, but travels a lot to Brazil. And so there was times when my dad was like hooking up the Oluwalu with stuff. So my dad was connected. He was like really, really connected. And so they had to take him out because of his connection to politicians, generals, the Oluwalu, and so many other people. He was the threat. Once he's gone,
There's no more threat. The family's not viewed the same way.
Sounds like a lot of people got some sort of payoff by your
oh,
father being
100%.
taken out.
Oh yeah, 100%.
All these people that are still doing their thing.
I tell you what, from what I was, from that post that I did July, I didn't even expect it. It's at like 5 million views on Twitter. Like I had my dad's mentee who's in Nigeria message me on WhatsApp like, yo, bro, like you all over the news here in Nigeria. I was like, well, he's like, your social media post. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, everybody's talking. You all over the news. I was like, and so he was saying that, dude, I forgot what was I was talking
about the post.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So there's been people on the post that's been commenting, and they keep mentioning the president's name, and they're saying, the president lied. The current president lied. He said that he discovered it. He said that he did all of this, and they're tagging the president.
Oh, so he's
Nigerian. And he was, from what they're saying, I can't confirm this, he was the senator of Lagos, or the governor or the senator, whatever, of Lagos when all that happened in '87.
And so he's trying to claim it as his whole idea.
So he had been telling the Nigerian government, Nigerian people in his election and all of this other stuff, I discovered Lagos, I discovered Banana Island, I made it what it is, and all of this, and so you need to vote for me as president. He's the current president of Nigeria. So people have been tagging him in my post, and saying to him that, yo, you lied. You said you discovered this. And it's like nobody discovered it. It wasn't discovered, it was created. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like you discover, a toolbox. You ain't gonna discover a freaking, you know what I mean?
So whoever has the blood on their hands for the scenario itself.
Yeah.
They turned you and your family back into, like you said, just let the boy play with his toys.
Yeah.
Turned the family into just a bunch of dirty civilians.
Yeah, pretty much.
Just take everything that you have.
Yeah.
So you moved to the Bronx.
Yep.
Did you have any money left over, or were you guys?
Nah, as a matter of fact, I didn't mention this story in my book, but one of the first things my mom did after all of this happened was she called up her cousin in New York, and this particular cousin, my grandfather, this is on my mom's side of the family, my grandfather helped raise him because his father was a drunk and a very abusive person. And so when his father left, my grandfather kind of stepped in and helped him. And anyway, he was a lawyer, successful in New York, only pretty much family member that had money that could help my mom out. So she called him up. She's like, hey, listen, I don't have a nickel to my name at all. And I got these 2 boys. I don't know how I'm gonna feed them. I don't have anything. And so he was like, all right, let me call you back. 5 minutes later, his wife called up my mom and said, how dare you call up my husband and ask him for money? Yeah, like, how dare you call up my husband and ask him, don't you ever do that again? And then she hung up the phone on my mom. And so that was, my husband just died, 2 small kids to feed, the only close family member that she has that can help her out, and pretty much slams the door in her face. But again, it was a blessing. At least what my mom tells me now to this day, it was a tremendous blessing, because that's what made her and like a switch went off in her mind where she was just like, all right, nobody's coming to the rescue. I gotta make this happen on my own. So my mom, dude, put in the work, man. She got a job in the South Bronx as an elementary school teacher because she had a master's in education, I believe, and then she would work jobs, man. She would work jobs at art galleries and museums. She started a creative writing business. That's kind of how I got into writing. She would make my brother and I write as kids, and she just, man, she would just freaking grind, bro. Like grind. Even now to this day, she's 70 and people think that she's my sister because, she's fit, man. Like she's works out, does pull-ups. I mean, that mindset that, kind of like go get after it. Nobody's coming to rescue. Like, she's like, I'm not depending on medication. I'm not depending on health insurance, Medicare. I'm going to take care of myself. And dude, like she's vegan. She does pull-ups. She runs. She's like 70, you know what I mean?
Puts 20-year-old dudes to shame.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. And but that mindset went back to when we were kids where she was just like, nobody's coming to the rescue. I got to do this on my own.
I think the most fascinating part of that story right there is that you found a love for writing before you became a SEAL.
Yeah, man.
Sorry. I had to throw that out there.
Usually the other way around.
No. I didn't. That's crazy.
I get it.
Sorry.
Well, dude, it was always there, man. My mom, where some parents put a basketball or golf clubs or, guns or whatever in their kids' hands and say, hey, let's go learn this. My mom was like all about writing. Because my mom was of the mindset that if you can articulate your thoughts in a literary format, you will never be without a job. You will never be without a job. In fact, like I said, she started this creative writing business when we were small kids. And this is before computers were like a thing. She would write term papers. She would type, for people who were in school and they were like, my mom was Chat GTP before they was Chat GTP because she was out there writing papers for people in school. They would pay her. She would,
I dipped into a little bit of that in college.
Yeah,
pay the bills.
Yeah, you know the deal. Yeah, you know the deal. It's lucrative because people don't want to do it and they're like, but they want to get an A and they finish. She would do resumes for people, you know what I mean? Business letters, all of that. And she generated money that way. And she would tell my bio and she would show us like a paycheck that she would get. Her name of her business was First Impression Writing Service. I'll never forget it. And she would get a check and she would show it to buyers like, see, like this check is going to feed you. How am I able to feed you? Because I know how to write. This is why you need to learn how to write. And she would make my brother and I, from the time we were small kids, read New York Times articles, read books, and write reports. And we couldn't go outside and play until those reports were like perfect. And it sucked. And if it wasn't like perfect, and I hated my mom. Like, I'll be honest with you, like I hated my mom because I was a kid, I wanted to go out and play. And if it wasn't perfect, she would make us pick another article or pick another book, start all over from scratch. She would always say to my brother, do it right the first time. Whatever you do it right the first time. Not the second time, not the third time, you do it right the first time. And so that was good for me, and that's what, set the foundation for me as a writer, and yeah, so that was the beginnings of the Bronx.
How were you? So obviously you were going to school in the Bronx.
Yep.
Did you like school or any component to it? Were you playing sports or build friendships?
Yeah, so as a kid, I would go out and play, there was a basketball court, DeVoe Park, it wasn't like organized, go there, play pickup games and stuff. And this is when I got a little bit, when I got to like 7, 8, 9, my mom would let me kind of venture off a little bit. Before that, she kind of tried to keep us in this bubble because we're in the Bronx, you know what I mean? At the height of the crack epidemic. And there's crime and the mafia I remember going into the local bodegas and seeing the Italian mafia dudes with the big collars shake down the Dominican store owners for their taxes. Hey, you gotta pay tax, you gotta pay. So, this was the environment that I lived in. My mom, for a long time, she did a good job of masking the reality of where we were and our situation. And she did that by keeping us inside. And there were times when we would go she would take jobs in museums and art galleries just to be able to allow, so we can go there for free. And so we would take a cab from the Bronx straight into Manhattan. You know what I mean? To a nice area. From there, straight back to the Bronx. She didn't want us to kind of see what was going on. You know what I mean? And so, but again, as I got older, she allowed me to venture off, and I began to see things, and I began to see that person on the street isn't sick. That person on the street is a crackhead. I began to see that guy giving that person who seems sick, he's not giving that person medicine. He's selling drugs to that person. You know what I mean? I began to see crazy things and play basketball. I mean, I remember, dude, I tell the story in my book. I was 8 years old playing basketball on the court in DeVoe, and me and this other kid who was my age, we were, bantering, talking crap back and forth, as kids do, because I was winning the game, and the kid finally blew up on me and told me to shut up. And I said, if you have not, what you gonna do? You know what I mean? Not thinking. And he was like, I'm gonna go get my brother and cousin. I was like, all right, go get your brother and cousin. Not thinking anything of it. And he goes across the street, and like 5 minutes later, he comes back with this guy who just got out of prison. He was 32, 33, something like that. And his brother, who was 19. Them three dudes beat me to a pulp, slammed me to the concrete. I mean, and I'm 8. You know what I mean? Slammed me to the concrete, stomped me, all that. And spit on me, held me up, spit on me. And that was the environment. And that was, and I would say that around that time is when I began to realize I'm not in Nigeria anymore, and I'm not gonna have the life. We're never gonna have the life that we once had, and unconsciously or subconsciously, whatever the right word is, that's when I began to kind of seek out a father to fill my paternal void, because I truly believe that every boy needs a man to teach him how to be a man, proper man, and every girl needs a man to teach her. Every boy needs a father to teach him how to be a man. And every girl needs a father to teach her how to be loved by a man, so she chooses the right one. You know what I mean? And so, and in the absence of the father, a kid will always naturally seek out other things. And then as they get older, then you'll see how detrimental those things are. And girls jumping from relationship to relationship, getting pregnant, at a young age, not looking at themselves in the mirror and feeling ugly, even though they're beautiful. You know what I mean? With boys, it's, seeking affirmation from their peers. Look at the inner city, man. I mean, and I think it's like in Chicago, like the single parent rate is like 80, 90%, like 80, 70, 80%, you know what I mean? And the Bronx is the same. And when you look in these communities where the father's absent, what else do you see? Crime, a teen pregnancy, a lot of crime, a lot of drugs. And why is that? Because there's not a man to be like, yo, son, this ain't the way things work. You know what I mean? And that's what I do with my kids in an even young age. Like 2 things. I'm like, hey, this is what a man is. This is what a man does. He keeps his word, shows up on time. He does what he's supposed to do. He shows respect to women. He does X, Y, and Z. This is what it is. And, and I affirm them at the same time. Like, even the little things, like, yo, bro, you're doing a freaking awesome job. Oh, man, you got a freaking A on the paper, great work, bro. But like little things, you know what I mean? Those are examples, but just so that they're constantly getting that, like, man, dad's proud of me, you know what I mean? Like, dad loves me. And so that now they're not seeking that from other kids. And so that's what happened with me. I was trying to find something to fill that void. I found it in the streets, in chasing women, in hip hop music, culture, drug dealers, all of that stuff. And that's when I began to gradually shift away from focus on sports to focus on getting money. And I wanted to focus on getting money so that girls would like me and affirm me, so that my peers would be like, yo, you the man. So that, and again, this is all retrospect. This is not what I'm thinking as a kid. I'm not like I'm a wild little animal. I'm not thinking that I'm doing this for these reasons, but in retrospect, in hindsight, I could see that that's exactly why I was doing things. And started out stealing from my mom, and then I would go to stores and steal from stores and then sell It's so funny. All this is fresh in my mind because my book got picked up to be a film with a major studio, and so they hired me to write the script. And so I just turned in the script before the writer's strike, and so all of this is very fresh in my mind. But I would steal from the store and then go to the park and sell a bag of chips that was a quarter in the store for a quarter, 35 cents or 50 cents, you know what I mean? Or sometimes less, 15 cents or whatever the case may be, just so I can get, and that was big to me as a kid, And then, I remember getting a job at a sneaker store called Athlete's Foot, horrible name for a sneaker store. And I lied to get the job because I had to be 16 to get the job, but I used my brother's I made like a fake ID with my brother, and my brother was a year older than me, and I was 15 and I got the job. And this is when credit cards started to become a thing, and people were starting to use credit cards more. And I was working the sneaker store was like right off of Times Square. It was like a few blocks away from Times Square. So we would get a lot of, wealthy people, bankers, old people in the area come in with their credit card. And then one day this guy came in and he was like, hey, I'm in a rush. I got a meeting that I got to run to him. I'm late. And he threw me he asked me, he saw some shoes. He's like, give me those shoes. And it was size 11. I got him the shoes. And then he was like, all right, how much of them? I was like, $80, whatever they were. He's like, hey, here's $90. And then he booked out, put on the shoes and booked out. And then that's when I was like, that's when I was like, I got my sneaker hustle. So what I would do was when people would come in to buy shoes, if they were $80 and they wanted to pay on a credit card, I'd say, hey, listen, the store's running a deal. If you're paying cash, I can give you the shoes for $70 or $50. And then they would obviously give me the cash or go to an ATM, get the cash, give me the cash. And then I would take their old, and I was told I had to keep your old shoes. So then I would take their old sneakers, put them in the box. And then there was in the storage room, there was a defected shoe section that nobody ever checked and went to. As a matter of fact, the company would send some people once every 2 months to come grab, not open the box and look, but just grab the boxes and take them somewhere to trash or recycle. And so I would do that. I was making crazy money, man. I was the kid in the high school. Everybody called me Sean John because this is when Puff Daddy had his clothing company called Sean John, and I made so much money in high school that I was wearing all Sean John clothes, and I was the dude that all the kids could come to get the new sneakers for if new Jordans that were $130.
How much were you bringing in?
Dude, I was selling
as a 15-year-old, right?
Yeah, as a 15-year-old, I was bringing in maybe, I don't know, $700, $800, $1,000 a week. I was smart about it because I couldn't do that with everybody. Because then, you know what I mean? I couldn't, because then the whole storage room would fill up. But I was smart about it. I was making good money. And I was selling it, and I had all the clients in my school that wanted the new sneakers, and they didn't want to pay $130 for them, but they would pay $120 for them. And again, it comes from my dad's entrepreneur mindset. I think I inherited that from my dad, but I was using it the wrong way. So I did that for a number of years, and then I migrated from that to selling drugs. And I would go to Washington Heights, where the Dominicans would sell me weight, which is a massive amount of drugs, and then I would go, sell the drugs. Now, I started out in the Bronx a little bit selling drugs, but then it's just saturated. It's drug deal on every corner. It's like McDonald's, And so I would go up to Poughkeepsie. A good friend of mine I grew up with, his parents moved him from the Bronx to Poughkeepsie to try to give him a better life. And so I would go up there. It was less drug dealers up there, and so the risk was lower. And we would go to college campuses and sell drugs on college campuses.
Was your mom aware of what was going on? What did she, when you came in wearing these new clothes, was she how'd you afford that?
I was a chameleon, just like the book, man. I was always a good actor. I was always good at figuring out a way to lie, or to create a facade. And so, with my mom, I was hey mom, I'm working at the sneaker store. Or hey mom, I'm doing this. Even when I wasn't working in the sneaker store anymore. Yeah, I'm working in the sneaker store.
Gotta go to work.
She doesn't have time to check up on her.
She ain't got time to check. She's working, doing her thing. My brother's in high school, and at the time as well, year ahead of me. And so, she was unaware of it. So I was a good liar. You know what I mean? I was really good at, like, again, creating a facade and making people believe, what was a lie, essentially. And so, yeah, that, I sold drugs, and then finally that progressed to the big thing that I was doing was I was selling hot phones. And that's, yeah, so essentially, in the early, like the 2000s, I would say 1999, 2000, 2001 time period, cell phones became a thing. And there were different companies that were trying to get in on it really, really quick. And so there was a guy I met who essentially he was working for a company, and he was illegally activating phones because he had like a code, a license, whatever the case may be, and he was illegally activating phones with people's personal information and then selling those phones. And so he put me on to that hustle, and that was way more money than selling drugs, and way more money, way less risk. Because and so he got me connected at this particular company, and what I would do was, I had a buddy of mine who I went to high school with. His girlfriend worked at a hospice clinic, so she would get me date of birth, social security number, first name, last name, and address of these people who are literally going to die. And I would be able to activate 3 cell phones on one person's line of credit. And the cell phones didn't have to be purchased because the money wasn't made really in the sale of the phone. It was made on the phone bill, because at the time the only plan that was available was 30 minutes for $29.99 a month, and people were going over. You can't. I mean, come on, you know what I mean? I have 30-minute phone calls, you know what I mean, on a daily basis. And so, that's where the cell phone companies would make the majority of their money, was when people went over those minutes. And so I would activate the phone, free calls. I was doing unlimited plans before there was such things as unlimited plans, right? So the person would get the phone. At the 30-day mark, they would get a bill, 30 days after having the phone. They had another 30 days to pay that bill, so the phone stayed on for 60 days. And then if it wasn't paid at the 60-day mark, it would cut off 30 days later at the 90-day mark. So
You'd
it
have
was
3 months worth of
3 months
a hot phone.
a hot phone. And I was selling drugs, so I had a whole bunch of clients who were drug dealers. And the drug dealers loved the phones because they can get a phone, stay off 90 days, not be traced to them. It's in somebody else's name, get rid of it, get a new phone, get a new number.
Brilliant.
You know what I mean? So it's
And you have repeat customers every 3 months.
Repeat customers, and I'm making tens of thousands of dollars a week. At this point, I'm 18, 19.
Where are you banking? Where are you hiding the money?
So, I had money. I kept cash in the house, but also the biggest thing that I did was I was trying to get into the record business. And so I was laundering that money through a record company. I was essentially, I signed artists. We would go on small mini tours, so the money would finance that. Studio time, the money would finance that. The guys needed clothes, the money would finance that. So essentially, like, I was and because my goal was to get out. I knew that at some point the gig was going to be up. I can't do this forever. And so kind of like what Jay-Z and Damon Dash did with selling drugs and then transitioning and using the drug money to do their music business, and then signing a label deal with Def Jam, Rockefeller Records, and then like that was their exit plan. That was my exit plan.
Where is this just all self-taught? Where just the idea of, I need to launder my money through this like business endeavor,
all self-taught, man. It was all like seeing how other people. I've always been a very visual learner. I learn for the most part, even like with filmmaking. A lot of what I don't think I could go to film school, sit in a classroom and learn that way. I actually have to like see people do it, experience it, and then actually go do it and learn that way. And that was kind of, I saw how other people moved, and I paid attention, and then I knew that I had to have an exit plan. I knew that I loved rap and hip hop music, and so that was my exit plan. So I just kind of learned on the fly, made it happen. And then also, I truly believe in the power of, DNA, like my dad's entrepreneur mindset, you know what I mean? You know, just certain things, synapses, whatever it's called in the brain, just wiring and going on saying, do this, do that, do this. You know what I mean? I think that came from my dad.
You had an end state goal.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
I feel like a lot of people, myself included, will sometimes start a project because
Yeah.
the project is fun or it
Yeah.
has immediate results
Yeah.
without having that forward thinking
Yeah.
end state goal 5 years from now,
Yeah.
5 months from now,
Yeah.
a future date. That's where I'm trying to take this project.
Yeah.
But you had that from a young age.
100%. And I think that all came from, again, my dad. He always had an end state goal. Even my mom, her end state goal with us was that you guys would make it and be successful men. You know what I mean? And even now, like with everything that I do in life, I had somebody ask me the question on a podcast, a couple days ago. He was like, hey, so would you consider yourself a hero? I was like, no. I said, I'm not going to consider myself a hero until my kids are upstanding, successful citizens. That's the end goal for me. Everything that I do, busting my ass, flying here, doing this, working hard, everything that I do is to help set up a foundation for my kids, for my legacy, and not just for my kids, for other people. Like I got other, we'll get deeper down into the story, but I got other people that are not my kids, but I've kind of taken on as my kids that I'm trying to help and set up for their future. And, and that, again, I don't get a little bit ahead. That's where storytelling for me is so important in my life, because I know how story has impacted my life. And if I could work hard to put stories out there via a megaphone, i.e. Hollywood, movies, TV shows, then I can help influence the masses in a positive way. And once people have been influenced in a positive way and minds have shifted and then that's success to me. Once my kids' minds have kind of merged with my mind, so to speak, in a positive way, and they're great people serving their community, serving their family, that's success for me. And that's my end goal. And that was my mom's end goal. And so I think this concept of always having an end goal, knowing what your end result is going to be, is something that, was just a part of me. And that's why I just always naturally did that, even to this day, stuff that I do.
Well, somewhere in there, you knew the jig was going to be up, and you ended up in the military.
Yeah.
How did that transition happen? And was it forced, or was it of your own free will?
Yeah, take us to the moment where you knew you're done.
Like, this is it.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Man, it was a lot of things. So, one, I got involved in this deal with this drug dealer. I sold, and I didn't want to. It was one of those things where I was like, I had a good thing going. I was selling X amount of phones. I wasn't getting caught. I was being smart about it. I was not just making money selling it illegally, but I was also getting a commission from the company. So I was double dipping, brother. I was double dipping.
This is great.
I was crushing it, bro.
Entrepreneur over here.
Yeah, I was crushing it, man. I was a top seller, man. I remember going in the office sometime and I won't mention the lady's name, but she's like, Remi, you're doing great. You're one of our good. Keep going. She would always be like dancing and stuff like that because she was so happy. I was her way of firing up the other salespeople. Like, let's go, let's sell.
Oh my God.
And so I'm out here like, yeah, I'm a seller, right? I was crushing it, man. And so I had this one drug dealer. He approaches me. I sold him some phones, and he's like, yo, I want to buy in bulk. I was like, no, I don't do that, brother. I was like, I got my standard in this safe. I don't need to deviate, because there were people getting caught and getting prosecuted federally. It's a federal crime. What we were doing was white collar federal crime. And so he convinced me, and I ended up selling him a large number of phones. I can't remember the amount. And the reason why he was wanting to do it, wanting bulk, was because he wasn't going to disperse to other drug dealers. He was flipping it. So if I sold him a phone for $300, he was selling it for $600. He was essentially trying to get in on what I was doing, because he saw how successful I was and how low how low of a risk it was. And now, if he's even more removed from it because he's not the one that's activating the phone, he's just getting it from a guy, then that's even less risk on him. You know what I mean? And so he convinced me. I sold him like 20 phones, the first, our first deal. I think can't remember if everything went smoothly, but at some point I sold him a batch of phones, and instead of cutting off in 90 days, they cut off in 2 weeks. And when that happened, bro, I was like, I wasn't even concerned about him killing me. Like I was like, I'm going to federal prison because somebody has found out what I was doing. And that was the first thing that crossed my mind, because never had the phones cut off that early. And I made him his money. He came to my house, threatened my mom's life. Not directly, he threatened me, and my mom was like a few doors down, pretty much threatened my mom's life as well.
You're still hiding all this stuff from
I'm
your
still
family.
hiding all of this. She has no clue. So if a dude comes in with guns, and she ain't gonna know what happened. And I gave him a bunch of money that I had in an apartment. The next day I gave him the rest of the money, and then he was like, dude, I want to keep doing it. I'm like, no, I'm done, brother. Like, you don't understand, dude. Like I ain't too worried about you almost killing me. I'm more worried about what's going to happen to me, and go to federal prison. So anyway, that was a huge wake-up call for me. That was a massive wake-up call for me. And the good thing is, I tell people, try to say this when I share this story, is my mom would spank me and my brother when we were kids. Like, she would give it to us. She would discipline us. And I know people think differently of it now, but it worked, because what that instilled in me was this concept of consequences for actions. So I always knew that, and that's why I had an exit plan. That's why, I had specific standards on how much I was selling and why, because I always knew that a consequence will come if I don't stop. And when that dude threatened my life and the phone's cut off, that was a proverbial spanking. That was like, all right, you better stop, or things are gonna get worse. Things may be getting worse for you. And so I stopped, gave him his money, as I said, and then I was like, okay, how am I gonna deal with this company thing, with the cell phone company? So I had my mom write a letter for me, a resignation letter, because in my naive mind, again, I'm 19, I'm thinking, all right, if I resign before this whole thing blows up, then
you'll be off the hook.
Then they can't come after me because I don't work for the company anymore. I know that's a stupid thought, but that's like literally, I don't know if somebody said that to me, but
You
that's
had to do something, and so that was something to do.
Yeah.
You had to do something dumb in this whole story, because
Yeah.
you've just like killed it.
I know,
all these
I know. And so I wrote my mom helped me write this resignation letter, and in the letter I'm like, you know what? It's like, I don't want to be at this company. All this stuff is going on. People are stealing phones and credit and activating phones, and
You played the good guy.
It's just too toxic.
I can't
for me.
be associated with this.
Yeah, that's exactly how. And I don't want to get caught up. I don't want somebody to think that it was me that was doing it. Like, I wrote that. It was a good letter, bro.
Wow.
And
Did your mom realize what was going on at this point?
No. Well, she didn't realize what I was doing. She thought that like that letter was like genuine. Like, I was genuinely like, hey, this is craziness going on, and I don't want to. And she was like, so she was for the letter. She was like, yeah, you need to get out of here. People are at that business.
So you were just like,
this.
Mom, I found this stuff out.
Yeah.
Dude, you got me nervous.
Yeah,
I'm stressed for you right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so you write this letter.
Yeah.
Do you take it to the
I
company?
take it to the company.
Play it out. How did it happen?
Dude, for one.
Did you swing open the door wide, slam it down?
So here's what happened. I had a brand new. I was making so much money. I had a Lincoln.
What?
Lincoln LS, bought cash.
How old are you at this point?
I'm 19 at this point,
Okay.
but I had it already from all the stuff that I was doing. Leather interior, fully loaded car. I remember buying it down in Manhattan, driving it right off the dealership in this nice Manhattan. So
Top salesman.
Yeah, I was making money. I was making crazy money, dude. And so when I would go in, when I would drive to the office, because the office was downtown. When I would drive there, I had no problem like driving into a parking lot. Parking lot was like ridiculous, $30 for like 6 hours or 8 hours to park, right? So I would park there, no problem. This time when I went there, I parked and I was like, man, $30, because I knew I wasn't going to be making any money anymore. And most of my money had been wrapped up in the music business, just like my dad's money was wrapped up in the island. And I get into the main lobby and I'm looking around, bro. I'm like, dude, is that dude a cop? Is that dude a fed? I'm shaking, I'm sweating, bro. Like I'm scared. I'm like, yo, you try to do this? And I get in the elevator and as I'm going up in my mind thinking, yo, as soon as the elevator opens, like all these cops are gonna be like guns on me, talking about, yo, we got you.
I can see it. I can visualize
80s
it.
SWAT
Bro,
movie.
oh my God, bro. I was like petrified. And then like I'm
He's
walking.
Matt Damon in The Departed going down with Leo.
Yeah, man, exactly what it was, man. And I'm walking through the cubicles, and I'm looking around, seeing somebody gonna bust out on me, people looking at me, and then I go straight to the lady, to the manager's office, and I see her. I'm like, all right, this is it. And she turns around and she looks at me and like gives like this frown. I'm like, oh damn. And then she smiles. She's like, Remi, what are you doing here? I was like, and then I sat down and I talked to her and I gave her the letter. But I needed to go in there for my peace of mind to know, like, what do they, at least get an idea, what do they know? You know what I mean? And I had to do recon, you know what I'm saying? And so she cried, bro. When I gave her the letter and said, hey, I'm leaving, she cried. Like, yeah. And when she cried, I was like, all right, she's not faking.
I like this lady.
Yeah.
I like her.
She was like, no, don't leave. Like, you're doing so good here. Like, you're a good dude and blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, nah, man. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And then I was like, I got a better opportunity somewhere else too. And it's not as, as controversial what's going on here. She's like, I understand.
She's still around.
I don't know, man. This is 2001, you know what I mean? 2002, like December 2001, January 2002.
So maybe.
Who would you have play her in the movie about your life? You know who comes to my mind? I don't know why. Melissa McCarthy.
Yeah, she for sure. Yeah, Melissa can play her. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that should be a good one. I didn't think about that. But yeah, man, that's how it all kind of played out. And then, from there, I went full steam ahead trying to land a label deal. So I went to MCA. I got meetings at MCA Records. I got a meeting at Def Jam with Kevin Liles, and just tried to sell the label, and everybody passed, and then the money ran out, and then I couldn't provide for the artists anymore, and then I went broke. And then for a few months, like from February of 2002 to June of 2002, I did nothing. I was just like, all right, what am I gonna do? I tried to figure it out, and I didn't want to go to college, and I because that was like beneath me. It's like, how did I go from having all of this money hustling to like going to college, and so. One day, June of 2002, I was in my bed and early in the morning, and I literally, no exaggeration, I've heard this voice speak to me as clear as I'm talking to you today. And at the time, I thought I was going crazy. It was my subconscious, but in retrospect, I truly believe it was the voice of God. And the voice said to me, you need to leave. I'm not, dude, I wasn't drunk, I wasn't high. I'm dead serious. Like, no exaggeration. The voice was like, you need to leave. I'm like, what? I propped myself up in the bed, looked around, I was like, where did that come from? And, it wasn't a female voice. It was sounded like a male voice. And I heard, actually before I propped up, I heard, you need to get out of here, you need to join the military. And that's when I pushed myself up. It was like, what is going on in here? TV wasn't on, window was open. I went to the window, nobody out there talking to somebody. Like, I thought, maybe that person was talking to somebody outside. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And that was all I needed to hear. And then like my mind just started going. It was just like, and I just started fighting now with this. I ain't joining the military. Like, I hated the police. You know what I mean? I associated anybody in a uniform as the police, whether you were Marines, Army, Navy, Marine, whatever, firefighter, paramedic. I hated authority. I hated the U.S. government. You know, I didn't want to have anything. I didn't like uniforms and all of that stuff and structure. I like my clothes baggy and hats backwards, still with my hat backwards. And I remember making fun of the ROTC kids in school, like just filleting them, like you fucking cornball. And it was always the nerdy cats with glasses and stuff and like uptight. And I was like, no, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. But then, like, as I began to like look around my room, I was like, dude, what has your life amounted to? Like, you're 19, about to turn 20. Like, you've done nothing with your life. Your brother's in college. And I look at the picture of my dad. There was this picture, kind of missed this part of the story, but when I was 8 and after I came back from the basketball court after that happened to me, what prompted me to start crying, I cried that night. And I was staring at the picture of my dad that was on this dresser, and I started crying because I was like, if Dad was here, we want to have this life. And my mom came in the room, asked me what was going on. I told her what happened, and so that's fast forward to me 19 now. I'm looking at that same picture, and I'm just like, man, like my dad wouldn't be proud of me at all, dude. Like, I screwed up. You know, my brother, he's on a full ride academic scholarship at Syracuse University studying engineering, and here I am, you know, having hustled my way into a hole. You know what I'm saying? And so that's when I was just like, screw it, you know.
What else is there?
What else is there? So I got dressed, ran down the street I grew up on, Fordham Road, went to, first I went into the Marine Corps recruiter's office, sat there for like 10, 15 minutes. There was coffee on the desk. So, and door was open, coffee on the desk, but nobody was there. And I remember like I'm waiting there. And then finally, like I got up, walked the door down. I think there was an Army recruiter's office, because this was like in like an indoor strip mall type thing. And I was like, yo, somebody coming back? Because in my mind, I was gonna, because I had, rewind, I saw Bad Boys. Bad Boys was the first movie I saw where I saw two like African-American dudes who like were cool and they were still playing heroes. Yeah. So that film inspired me, kind of planted the seed, hey, you could be something other than a drug dealer, rapper, or, you know, athlete. You could be a hero in some way and still maintain kind of who you are.
A movie did that to you.
A movie planted that seed, you know, and that's why, going back to why I tell story now, you know. And then 2 years later, I saw The Rock.
And so good.
Yeah.
I had to sneak that in because my parents wouldn't let me watch it.
Yeah.
But I had to watch because I was a huge Bond fan. And Sean Connery and Nick Cage was the bit. I gotta see it. I can't even remember how I ended up watching it, but I ended up getting into a theater and like being able to watch it.
Yeah, man, that movie was a game changer for me because that was the first time I was exposed to Navy SEALs. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And coming out the water with the rubber, you know, suits on, and you know, the goggles and the suppressed guns and the underwater
shower.
Yeah, and then they're sacrificing themselves, and that was like, and I remember it because I might have been 15 when that came out. I remember saying to myself, if I ever turn my life around, that's what I'm gonna do. And it was like far-fetched, like, because in my mind, like, I'm never gonna get out of I never thought I would leave the Bronx, because most people don't. But fast forward to when I was in the Marine recruiter's office, there was a big cutout of a guy who was dressed just like the SEALs. He had on like a wetsuit and the hood and the goggles and the suppressed M4 and just all MP5 and all the get up and the fins and all that. And I was like, yeah, I'm talking to the cutout like, yeah, I'm gonna be you, man. Yeah, I'm gonna do that Navy. I'm not knowing the difference between, you know, this is the Marine Corps. I'm like, I'm gonna be a SEAL, yeah. And then I went into the Army recruiter's office and I asked the guy, hey, where's the Marine guy? And the guy ignored me. And I remember that pissed me off because I was like, dude, you disrespecting me. So I went back in and then didn't show up at the Marine recruiter office. The guy still didn't show up. So I went 2 doors down to the Navy recruiter office. So I remember, oh yeah, Navy SEAL. And so I walk into the office and it's this beautiful Puerto Rican Navy recruiter in there by the name of Tiana Nadine Reyes, right?
And you still remember her name,
man.
She must have been beautiful.
Yeah, she was beautiful, man. And she's Puerto Rican. She was from the Bronx, did her time on the ship, and then she came back to be a recruiter in the Bronx. And so, like, I see her, and I'm like, oh, man, like, dude, I'm getting this girl, and I'm swabbing. So I'm like, yo, what's up,
She was selling the Navy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yo,
it's
what's up?
Yeah.
And she was like, she saw through me right away. She's like, she sees a million clowns like me. So she's like, what are you trying to do? I was like, I'm gonna be a Navy SEAL, man. Yeah, not too many dudes come from the hood. Yeah, I'm talking like this. And I was like, I got a record company and we about to blow up. But I'm thinking about, putting that aside for a little bit to do this Navy SEAL thing, because not too many dudes come from the hood and become SEALs. And she's laughing and giggling and like, whatever. So then she's like, all right, Navy SEAL, come over here and take this practice ASVAB test. So go to the computer, take the practice ASVAB test. I score high enough to get into the Navy, but I didn't score high enough to go into SEAL training, because you got to score really high to get a slot in the SEAL training. So then she was like, that was a bit despondent from that, but I shook that off. I was like, I'll figure it out later. So then she had me she ran my background. And when she ran my background, she discovered I had 2 warrants out for my arrest. I had a warrant in New Jersey and I had a warrant in New York.
Did you know you had warrants?
No.
So this was a surprise
to
you.
So my whole body got hot. Like, and that, like hot, like immediately, like, dude, I thought I was gonna have a heart attack, like literally.
Because now you're standing in front of someone wearing a uniform.
Yep.
And they're now informing you that there's warrants out for your arrest.
And the first thing that came to mind was Fed time. You know what I'm saying? The cell phones. Because you got to remember, I left there like December, January.
You thought you were free.
I thought I was free and clear. So I figured, oh, they caught up with me. And now I got these warrants.
What were the warrants for?
So I'll get to that. So I bolted towards the door. I just ran towards the door. And she screamed at me. She was like, stop. And I was like, what? She was like, you have a suit? I said, no. She's like, do you have a collar shirt and some nice pants? I was like, I'm sure I could find something. She's like, come back tomorrow. I was like, for what? Why? And she's like, she snapped at me. She's like, just come back tomorrow. Like, all right, just come back tomorrow. Listen to me. Stop being stupid. And growing up in the streets of the Bronx, like selling drugs and just even growing up in the streets without the drug part, but then when you sell them, you got to learn how to read people, because that can mean the difference between life and death, going to prison, not going to prison. And this would all serve me really well when I got into human intelligence and the SEAL teams, running sources and all that. But, growing up in the Bronx, you have to learn how to read people. And one thing that I read from her reaction and her response was, I don't know exactly what she's going to do for me, but her intentions are good. She's going to do something good for me. And so I came back, I can't remember if it was the next day or next week. I mean, you got to remember this over 20 years ago. And she was in her dress uniform. And she drove me to New Jersey. And in Jersey, that's when I found out that it was actually a warrant. I was doing like 90 and 100 and it was reckless driving. Okay. And then she took me to New York and she stood before the judge and said, hey, this dude's made mistakes, but he has potential. You know what I mean? He wants to join the military after an act of war. 9/11 had just taken place 9 months earlier. But he can't join the military without warrants. And the judge was like, hey, if this guy's trying to join the military after an act of war, and we're at war right now, and like cats are dying, if he's serious, then I'll clear his record. So he cleared that record, expunged it. Then we went to New York, one down, one to go, said the same thing. I won't say what the warrant was for.
It's fine.
Because it's going to be in the movie. I don't want to give it away.
You already know, it's public indecency.
Or it may have been something with the phones. I don't know, but you'll find out when you see the movie. And yeah, man, she gave the same speech. Judge was like, yo, and interestingly, the courthouse was like blocks from ground zero. So like when we went down there, it was still like barricades up, like, it was destroyed, the whole area. And judge was like, yeah. And then she went a step further, fudged the paperwork, snuck me into the Navy. And that was how I got into the Navy.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
What MOS did you join with?
As a corpsman.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I joined as just forgot what the number was, but a corpsman medic.
Did you have like medical aptitude or was that interesting? I mean, for any degree, or was it just like, I'll take whatever I could get?
Nah, I was like, again, just 20 years ago, so I can't remember it all, but I just figured, you know, I wanted to go to combat, and I knew I wouldn't be able to go straight to buds because I couldn't swim, didn't have the academic scores, and I was super skinny, so I knew I needed to get some training in those areas in order to be able to get into buds. And I figured, you know what, I'll go to 1st Marine Division. Because so then when I go to buds, again, I'm thinking, I'm coming up with these plans that I think are the proper plans that are gonna work out, but you know, that was probably a stupid plan, because it's like, because they were cats that I mean, we'll get into it later, but they were cats that, you know, that I went to buds with, and they didn't make it through buds. They were corpsmen. They went to 1st Marine Division, and they didn't make it. I mean, you know, a few cats, they got killed. One guy, crazy story, I was supposed to go with him to 1st Marine Division at the same time, and he ended up being in a corpsman in the back of a Humvee that got hit with an IED. Every dude in the Humvee died instantly. He happened to be in the perfect spot, and it was like one of those hatchback Humvees that had the opening, and the explosion blew him out of the Humvee. He permanent brain damage. I remember seeing him in the hospital. Dude, he's just can't even, like not really conscious, and stitches all. I mean, you know, so it was my plan that I thought was the right plan was probably not the right plan. So I picked the corpsman, you know, for that reason. So anyway, after I finished A school, though, I didn't get sent to 1st Marine Division. I got sent to Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton. You know what I mean? And it was a blessing, though. And because when I got there, my LPO, I talked to her. I was like, hey, I want to be a SEAL. And she believed in me. And she was like, all right, I'll change your schedule. So I would work 4 hours in the morning, and then I would have 4 hours in the afternoon to train, whether that's study the ASVAB, whether that's swim, workout, whatever. And then I would come back and work the night clinic for 4 hours. And then, you know, I did that for 6 months. And within 6 months of checking in the command, I had received orders to SEAL training. I retook the ASVAB, you know what I mean? Again, I was focused on that vision. I retook the ASVAB, scored high enough to get in the buds, freaking put on, I was like 140, 150 pounds, put on like 60 pounds of muscle, got the endurance, learned how to swim. And then, you know, got into SEAL training. So that was the path, yeah.
Guys, the firearms and tactical industry, I hate that term, but we dive into physical fitness, and a lot of people are stressing the importance of getting and staying in shape. But the second component to that is eating well. Factor Meals has a really cool deal that we're gonna share with you guys here. If you're not familiar, Factor provides ready-to-eat food that is pre-prepped and delivered to your door. It comes at around 550 calories per meal. You can select how much protein, fruits, veggies, whatever is actually going to ship, and then when it arrives, it takes around 2 minutes to get warm and then consume. So it's gonna save you a lot of good time, and if you're trying to get and stay in shape, Factor is a really good way to go, and they are the sponsor of this channel.
And if you're like me and you have a brood of children and you're starting businesses and you have very little time, but you also want a high protein, maybe low carb diet based on what you're trying to do, it's fast, it's easy. We've been using it for a long time, my wife and I, and we're huge fans. So if you want to get in on this, you can head over to factormeals.com/DC50 and use the promo code DC50 to save 50% off your meals. Again, that's the code DC50 at factormeals.com/DC50 for 50% off. So if you want to save some time, and time is money, hit them up, enjoy, and get back to doing what you do during the summer. Okay, so you are now, you've gone into buds.
Yep.
Okay, so explain, like, where did you go from there?
Where did I go from buds?
Yeah.
So after buds, well, in short, got to buds, almost died in Hell Week the first time I went through Hell Week.
Tell the story.
all right.
You can't throw that out there.
Almost died has to have a story behind it.
So I, before Hell Week, we have med checks, because like Hell Week is a very, very dangerous evolution. People have died in Hell Week because they're really stripping, they're beating you down. You know, it starts on Sunday, ends on Friday. You only get 2 hours of sleep on Wednesday, 2 hours of sleep on Thursday. By the time you even get to Wednesday, your brain is so wired that you can't even fall asleep. And also, like most guys by Wednesday are hydrophobic because the entire Hell Week, they keep you freezing cold and wet, right? So by the time you get to Wednesday, the only time you're dry is when they, like right before you take a nap. And so that anticipation of being woken up and getting thrown back into the surf zone is torturous. So because you're hydrophobic, because you're wired from being up since Sunday, you can't sleep anyway. So pretty much you get no sleep for the most guys don't. And they do everything, log PT, surf torture, boats on heads, feels like your neck's gonna break, everything. So because of how treacherous and horrid Hell Week is, hence the term Hell Week, you have to go through like a medical check in order to start Hell Week. And you've already been in SEAL training for 3 weeks. And by the time you get to Hell Week, you've already lost like a number of guys in your class. I mean, the class that I graduated with started with 270, 29 of us graduated. That 270 that started, by the time they got to Hell Week, I want to say they were somewhere around 80, 70, 80 guys who got to Hell Week, and only maybe like 25 guys made it through, came out the other end of that. Right, so you lose a number of guys before you even get to Hell Week, and so when I went to go get my med checks, I was spitting up blood before I even went into the clinic. I was spitting up blood, and not just blood, but it was like Jello. And being a corpsman, I knew that I had pneumonia or SIPE, swimmer-induced pulmonary edema, which is pretty much a form of pneumonia. But but in my mind, I was just like, dude, I don't want to freaking go through 3 weeks of first phase again. It's horrible, bro. Like to go to 3 weeks of first phase again and then go through Hell Week. Nah. So I hid the injury. I when the doctor was listening to my lungs, I kind of like played around with my breathing and stuff because my lungs they weren't as shredded as they got once I got deeper into Hell Week. They weren't as fillable. So I was able to kind of manipulate a little bit in order to like get the approval to go into Hell Week.
Chameleon.
Yeah, chameleon. You know what I mean? And so started Hell Week, and bro, it was kick in the nuts, dude. Like we had our breakout, and then after breakout, you have the surf torture. That's I don't even know how many hours, an hour or two or whatever, and guys freezing cold. This is winter. And that's another thing a lot of people don't realize. This is the difference between going through winter buds and not winter buds.
In the Pacific Ocean.
In the Pacific, bro. Like it's like there's a class that just went through winter Hell Week and phase. Only 14 guys came out. Okay, so that like winter is different, and so they surf tortured us, and then we had to do this run with boats on heads, and it's from Coronado Buds Beach to State Beach, which is like 6 miles, like 5 to 6 miles, and then you got to go from State Beach to the Silver Strand, which is Imperial Beach, which is like another 5, 6 miles. Boats on head. Well, actually, you do boats on heads to State Beach, and then you do carry the logs, 7 guys on the logs, to Imperial Beach. And dude, I was done, bro. Like I couldn't breathe. It was like I was breathing through a straw because my lungs were crap. And like I collapsed, got back up. I'm still getting at it. And the instructors were like, "Quit, you dirt, you're sandbag." They thought because you get a lot of guys who want to quit but don't want to quit. And so they'll, say I'm sick or I'm this and I'm that. So the instructors see that all day long. So they thought that that's what I was doing. In their defense, they thought that's what I was doing. But in reality, I was like,
you just weren't getting oxygen.
I couldn't breathe. But then so I had to get back up and keep going. Boom, 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 boom. So went through all of this. And then we got to, I want to say, Tuesday of Hell Week. It was either Monday night or Tuesday night of Hell Week, can't remember. And we did Steel Pier. And Steel Pier is where it's the coldest I've ever been. It's the coldest part of Hell Week. There was a steel pier, and they hose down the pier with water, and they hose you down, and they like gradually strip you down. At first, you start off, you lay down on the pier with, your clothes on, and you get up, then you jump in the bay, and you got to tread water in the bay. It's freezing cold, and you're treading, and you're just like, trying to breathe. And bro, I could barely stay afloat. Like I'm going down, sucking in water, coming up, fighting, going, and then they pull you out, take off your shirt, pull you out, take off your pants, and so they go through this process, and guys quit because it's brutal, man. And the last time I was a part of that, the last iteration of that evolution, they pulled me out, they pulled us all out. I can't remember everything that happened, but I was a ghost, pale. I was not incoherent. And they took a core temperature, and my core temp was 88.7.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, 88.7, bro.
On top of the fact that you're not actually physically able to get a deep breath.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, it was deadly, bro. So they threw me in the ambulance, drove me speeding like to the Bud's medical clinic, get in there. And they start to do the proper process of rewarming me. And at that point, I was just like, yo, man, like, I ain't trying to die at this point. I was like, let me just tell them, and I'll just have to start all over again. So I told the doctor, like, I spit up like Jello blood, and I showed it to the doctor. Or it was either the corpsman or the doctor, like, yo, listen, man. I was like, I got pneumonia or psych or something. And because they had gotten the report from the instructors, yo, man, this dude's faking, he's sandbagging, he's not giving 100%, so get him rewarmed and put him back. And if he doesn't want to go back, just call it a nonverbal DOR. So when I showed it to him, they was like, sorry, man, we can't help you. And the interesting thing was the doctor, I worked with his wife at my first command, Naval Hospital, Camp Pendleton. So, and he had given me a tour of Buds like while I was stationed up there. So, because I worked with his wife and I was cool with him, he even told me, he's like, yo, man, I can't mix, friendship and business. Like, you either got to quit or you got to go back in, like, because he thought I was lying, you know what I'm saying?
Even after you spit up?
Even after I spit up, yeah. And so after I got rewarmed, they put me in an ambulance, took me back to, at this point, the class was at, they were at the bay getting surf tortured, and seeing Chief Fortin, never forget his name, because he ended up becoming my platoon chief, one of my platoon chiefs. He comes up to me, he's like, all right, Adeleke. He was like, you want to quit? And I was like, nah. He's like, you want to get back in the water? I was like, who ya? He's like, all right, get back in the water, quit. So I get back in the water, all jacked up. Then we do base tour. Base tour is like brutal, where you're doing boats on heads, but you're running on concrete, and it's like it's a race. Like you're because the boat crew that wins gets like a small little break in between, or they stay at, I can't remember, they stay at the front and they get like a 5-minute break, whatever the case may be. And bro, like all I remember is like running, and then woke up in the hospital. Essentially, what my boat crew guys and instructors told me is that's like, yo, remember you were running, it was like somebody pulled a switch out of a computer. You went, like your whole body went, bam, like on the concrete, smashed my whole frontal on the concrete. And they tried to revive me. They did a sternum rub, all that stuff. And when they got me to the hospital, Bud's clinic, then they took a chest X-ray. And it was like, holy crap, this dude wasn't faking. My lungs were done, bro, shredded wheat. And not only did I have pneumonia, I had pneumonia and SIPE, swollen-induced pulmonary edema. I also had rhabdo, which rhabdo, people die from that. It's like rhabdo, I can't, yeah, where your body starts breaking down. Your body essentially starts eating itself, your muscle tissue, and it gets into when it gets into your bloodstream and stuff, like not your bloodstream, but your urine and stuff, it can kill you. And so a lot of people have died from it. So they get me to, I was in the ICU for a week. Yeah, man. Yeah, and then when I got out of the hospital, when I finally got out of the hospital, I went back to my barracks on the Buds compound, And never forget these two senior guys, Master Chief, I won't mention his name because that dude's a freaking legendary killer in the teams. And then Senior Chief Ford, and they came in, it was like Adeleke, we're freaking glad you didn't quit. That's what we look for. Master Chief was like, that's what we look for in the SEAL. Like, a dude is dead, but he just keeps going. He just keeps going. He just keeps going. The dude looked like Freddy Krueger. Like, no exaggeration. Like, this particular
my
Master
gosh.
Chief, yo, he was a dev group for like, helped start dev group. I mean, this dude was a legend. Like, and then the other team guys that listen to this, they know who I'm talking about. This dude is a legend, bro. Looked like Freddy Krueger. I don't want to mention that part of the story. But anyway, he was like, but that's what we look for. I said, dude is dead. It's gonna keep on effing going. And he's like, we're sorry, we didn't know. And then Senior Chief Ford was like, yeah, good work, but you got to start day one again. And so I was like, dang, dude. So anyway, yeah, I started day one, brother. First phase, watch 100 dudes quit, dude. And then went through Hell Week. But it was cool because in my first boat, I got to be with a lot of good dudes. Mikey Mansour was in my boat crew in 25, my first class, 250. DeShasia was in my, Workman was in my class. He was on Extortion 17. Ryan Job, you know what I mean? So there was like a lot of legends. And then I rolled into 251 and made it through Hell Week. I was with Mark Lee. He was in my boat crew.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So a lot of good dudes, you know what I mean? So that was a good thing. So anyway, I made it through Hell Week. After I made it through Hell Week, I had been failing my ocean swims. So after I made it through Hell Week, I got performance rolled 2 classes. And that's when they really taught me how to swim in the ocean and with fins and gear and all of that. Because you have to do a 2-mile timed ocean swim once a week. And it's a time limit, and you have to make that. And first phase is 85 minutes, second phase 80 minutes, third phase is 75 minutes, and I was doing 120 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But you
was
cleaned
bad.
it up.
Yeah. So they had to tighten me up big time. So they put me in rollback land, taught me how to swim in the ocean, and then I passed my swims, got to dive phase. When I got to dive phase, super prideful, you know what I mean? Just out of control, partying. In my mind, I already arrived because I made it through Hell Week, made it through the Bronx, yada, yada, yada. And and I failed my first 2 swims in dive phase because the swim times dropped to 80 minutes. And then I get to dive week, and there's a bunch of different evolutions in dive week. You got ditch and dawn, where you gotta go on the, go in the water with all your dive gear, take all your dive gear off in a certain sequence, put it back on. Then you got night ditch and dawn, where you do that blindfolded. Then you have buddy gear exchange, where you and your buddy go down underwater, and you got to take off your buddy's gear, put it on in a certain sequence, and buddy breathe through that one rig, and then you got to do the same thing with him. And then you do that blindfolded. Then you have pool comp, which is we talked about that offline, where the instructor swims down to you and ties your hose in, and like after you exhale, ties your hose in, you not rip your dive tank, like destroys all your gear. And then on that one breath, which you don't even have a breath because you excel that because they're able to see your bubbles come up. And once they see your bubbles come up, that's when they hit you and rip the mouthpiece out and all that. And then you got to, in a specific sequence, put it back on. And then the final test, which is a test you kind of do every single day, at the end of those tests, if you pass those tests, is called the tread. And it's horrific, man. It's 5 minutes. You got to tread water with twin 80 dive tanks on, weight belt on, all the dive gear, keep your hands above water. So your hands can't touch. As soon as your hands touch water, you fail. It literally feels like
For
you're
5
drowning
minutes?
For 5 minutes. For 5 minutes. And then after that, once you hit the 5-minute mark, you got to swim on your stomach the length of the pool, touch the wall, and then swim on your back the length of the pool. And that ends the test. And the instructors knew that a lot of guys struggle with that test, so they would show up on the weekends and work with, help train and prep guys and give them technique. But I was too busy partying in the Gaslamp district, sleeping around, waking up in chicks' apartments I didn't know, and that I didn't show up. I wasn't there for remediation. So, but again, I was doing all those things. I thought I had already arrived. So, long story short, failed the tread 4 times, and had already failed 2 swims, went to an academic review board, and they were like, yo, we're dropping you. I got kicked out of training, bro. So I went through all of that stuff to get dropped. Got performance dropped, got sent to 1st Marine Division, this time. You know what I mean? And that's why I said the guy, like this guy who got blown out of the Humvee, like we were in buds together in 250, and there was some other guys that quit or whatever happened to them. When they went to 1st Marine Division, they got killed. You know, the dude got blown up, permanently crippled, could never go back to buds. And went to 1st Marine Division, and dude, like I like the moment I got dropped from training, actually the next day after I got dropped from buds, I was like training. I was like working. I didn't know if I would get the opportunity to go back, but I knew that if the opportunity came, I would be prepared. And so I just started training, and you know, got there. As soon as I got to my command at 1st Marine Division, I talked to my LP. I was like, yo, dude, I'm trying to go back to buds. I had a letter of recommendation from the instructors that recommended that I come back within a year. And my LPO was like, yo, and going back, I've always, like, God has always put people in my life. You know what I mean? Even like with you guys, you know what I mean? Like at certain times, like, hey, let me bless you, let me help you, let me bless, you know what I mean? From Tiana to, you know, I didn't even mention my Aunt Doki, who gave me the money to pay the court fees and court fines, to, you know, my first LPO at the hospital to let me train, to this new LPO, to, like, God has always just put people in my life that's like, yo, let me help you out, you know what I mean? Let me move things forward for you. And that's what my LPO was like, dude, just do the right thing, and I'll get you back to buds. And so, you know, I was in Scout Sniper Platoon for a bit. I went from Scout Sniper Platoon to 81s, you know, did a pump with them. And then when I got back, my LPO, like the whole God thing, he went in from being in charge of 10 corpsmen at we call it a BAS, it's a battalion aid station. So at every 1st Marine Division command, you have a BAS where that farms out the corpsmen to the different platoons, whether it's Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Wing Platoon, whatever. And that guy, my LPO, went from being in charge of the 10 corpsmen at that BAS to being in charge of, like, no exaggeration, 600 corpsmen, because he got promoted to the command career counselor. So he was in charge of the career of every corpsman at Camp Pendleton and every corpsman at 29 Palms. And you know what I mean?
So he helped you get back to buds again?
Yeah. So he was like, so when he got to the command career counselor suite, he went to the command master chief for 1st Marine Division, who's again in charge of 600, 700 corpsmen around, you know, on the West Coast. He's like, hey, listen, I was just serving with this guy, Remi Adeleke, you know, did a pump, and he's a good dude, and he got a recommendation to go back to buds early. Can you hook him up? Can we get him in? And Master Chief was like, you vouch for him? He's like, yeah, I vouch for him. He's like, all right. He was like, I'll let him go back, but he needs to sign a page 13. It says if he doesn't make it, he's going to come back to 1st Marine Division, do 2 more deployments, and a minimum of 3 years. Yeah, and then after that, then he can do whatever, but he has to come back and do 2 deployments in 3 years. And 3 years. And so, yo, I was like, oh, I'm all in, burn the boats. I signed that paperwork, boom, 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 boom. And I was like, I'm gonna make it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it was like, I had no choice, man. And so I went back and, you know, went through, sucked, having to go through the first phase and, you know, Hell Week again and all that, but went through and then made it through. Got through buds, got to SQT, had another setback, broke my ankle in static line jump school. On my second jump, did 2 more jumps, went to the hospital, couldn't walk for 4 months, and then finished the rest of SQT, SEER, all that stuff, you know, CQC, land warfare, diving, all of that, which essentially SQT is like once you graduate buds, you get the rating of a SEAL, you just don't get your trident. And so you just have to go through SQT, and they treat you like a SEAL when you're in SQT.
So they're a little more respectful. They're not trying to beat you down. They're trying to.
There's no beat down
education.
Session. Yeah, it's all education.
Yeah.
So essentially, SQT is modeled after a platoon workup. So TRADET puts your platoon through what's called workup, where you go through a block of land warfare, a block of CQC, a block of diving, a block of skydiving. You do all of these blocks as training as a SEAL platoon, and then you're eligible to deploy. You're not eligible to deploy until you your platoon, not just individuals. And there's guys like new guys who, they make it through SQT, they get to work up and they get kicked out of the teams because they're sucking in that CQC. And they getting safety violations, and the command's like, "Yo, bro, you can't do it." And so, and then after that, you deploy. So some guys deploy straight out of SQT. So essentially, yeah, because their platoon that they're gonna get farmed out to is already on deployment or at the tail end of their deployment, and so they go straight there, and then come back and then do their another platoon.
So what team did you get originally attached to?
3.
Okay. Yeah. Is that where you wanted to be?
I wanted to be on the West Coast.
Okay.
So like I wanted to stay in San Diego. You know what I mean? It's usually 50-50, like half of the class wants to go to stay on the West Coast, half the class wants to go to the East Coast, so everybody fills it out, and it typically always works itself out. So yeah, man, and I went to 3 with legendary command. I mean, Mikey was there, Mansour, Jocko was there. As a matter of fact, I remember I checked into the command, and I met Chris Kyle in the platoon space. You know what I mean? Like, and it was crazy because this dude from the Bronx, you know what I mean? And you know what I mean? And my platoon chief, he's like, yo, he's like, hey, this is SO. I think I was SO2 Adeleke. He's like, hey, I'm Chief Kyle. I'm like, all right, cool, what's up, man? Yeah, cool, man. But then like I didn't know who he was. Sure. You know what I mean? From from the sniper, all the stuff that he did.
How many deployments did you have?
3.
Okay. Where were they?
Middle East.
That's fair.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. I try to be vague with it just because the humid stuff I did.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Especially one of them was what's called a national tasker. Okay. So I just got to be careful. But yeah, man. But yeah, I got to do some cool things. Like I mentioned. I found out about human. Human stands for human intelligence. Again, if I'm going too fast, because I know time-wise, just let me know. You can slow me down. In every SEAL platoon, each guy has a specialization. So naturally, I was one of the corpsmen in my platoons, right? And then from being a corpsman, I also got the specialization of human, which stands for human intelligence, which I didn't know existed until I got to SQT. And at the end of our one of our SQT dive, FTX, which was cool. What they had us do was we had to navigate through the waterways in downtown San Diego, and then come out of the waterway, have our dry bag, change into regular clothes, and then go to a coffee shop and meet with somebody and get in a van and drive off. And I was like,
sounds awesome.
I was like, yeah, that's sick. It was like it was a sick FTX. And then the guy who ran us through that, he was like, yeah, I was a human guy at the command. I was like, and he started explaining to me, and I was like, dude, like I want to do that. And so when I got to my command, I was like all in, like, yo, I want to do this. But being a new guy, I couldn't really, you got to get a waiver. And so my platoon chief was like, yo, you can't do it. You have to have at least 1 pump under your belt before you can go. And so I was like, all right, cool, easy day. So I did my workup. Went to ProDev, I went to some advanced medical courses, went to soft OEMS and high altitude cold weather medicine and some other stuff. So ProDev is where, guys either go to primary schools, like if it's sniper school and you go to sniper school, human school, or if it's advanced sniper, you go to advanced sniper, whatever the case may be. And then after a few months of ProDev, then you go to ULT, which is your whole platoon now comes together and does, like I said, the skydive and CQC, all of that as a command. And then you have SIT, where SIT is like where you find out where you're deploying to. And then you kind of focus on training to that specific mission set that you're going to be carrying out. So we were going to go our mission set required us to do a lot of DAs, which, what DAs is, direct action. It revolves around CQC. So we did some advanced CQC with some tier 1 units, with a tier 1 unit actually. And then we also found out that, the platoon is going to need more human guys. So my OIC was like, yo, who wants to go to human school? And like nobody wanted to go in my platoon because it involves a lot of writing. Like there's the cool side of it where you're like carrying cash, running sources, and wearing civilian clothes and growing out. Kind of like the best example I can give, that's on the class is Black Hawk Down. In the beginning of Black Hawk Down, when I forgot the Delta dude, when he's
getting off the bicycle.
Yeah, he's riding a bicycle, and he's talking. He's the one running. He's the one that connected the general with the source. The guy, what was his name?
The guy that I can't remember his name, but he was driving the car with the tape on the top of it.
Yeah. So essentially, that's like that's like a small glimpse of like the human side of things. And so my command was like, hey, you guys are gonna need more human guys, because we didn't have any, and nobody wanted to do it. So again, like I was getting at, what now I remember is there's a glamorous side of it that's cool, but then there's the writing side of it.
But here you are.
Exactly.
You're already a writer.
Exactly. And no team guy wants to do it. But but most team guys don't want to do it, because the last thing they want to do after handling sources is write into the long intelligence reports. Or the last thing guys want to do after coming from an op is writing an intelligence report. But for me, I was like, bro, like I love writing. I don't mind it.
I'll hire my mom to do it.
I ain't trying to go to federal prison.
I'm just teasing.
But so I went to the school, and it was a kick in the nuts. Like the writing side, like the all the trade craft stuff was cool, but the writing side was hard. There were guys who fell out of the course because you have to go out in town and do certain training, I won't go into detail, and then you got to come back, and because you can't take notes, right? Because out in town is considered like bad guy land, right? So if you get stopped by like the foreign police or whatever, and you got notes and all this stuff on you, like you're incriminating yourself. So you got to memorize everything. And then you got to go back into this skiff essentially, and you got to
document
everything from top to bottom. And it's like the reporting is like detail, but that's where you learn how to write visually, and you learn how to that's where, because there's writing, but then there's storytelling and writing. You know what I'm saying?
So that's interesting.
Visual storytelling, yeah.
Because that's a question that I was going to have was, how has the military and working in the SEAL teams, you hear all the time guys who are in the military that get out and they say, well, man, how do I take my previous life experiences to something today? And there's guys who will go join, and they'll be a corpsman, and they'll be like, well, I could be I could go work for the CIA, or I'm a corpsman, maybe I'll go get some more medical training, or take some of that and go do those kinds of things. Yeah. Maybe SIGINT guys find a way to work inside of intelligence and working inside of that world. Yeah. But you have a very unique,
I'll allow it,
story to your life where you've been taking combat, storytelling in detail.
Yeah.
And for the people who haven't been keeping up, I'm sure they heard in the intro, you work in the Hollywood world telling stories. Influencing current and future generations with detailed storytelling. That's I mean, that's one of those like Holy Spirit divine interventions. Just like, how else can you explain it?
There's no other explanation but God. You know what I'm saying? That's why I say like people like, no offense to anybody, when people are like, I don't believe God, I'm just like, yo, bro, all you gotta do is look at my life. Like, you can't make this up, bro. All of this stuff can't be orchestrated. You know what I mean? It's like right, and this is why I do, like, when I text you guys the other day, I was like, yo, everything happens for a reason. Like, I know people say that cliche, but dude, like, I've been in a season of my life, like the last 2-3 months, that like all kinds of crazy good things happen that wouldn't have happened if it didn't happen the way they happened. And everything happened for a reason. Even the bad things, the good things, case in point, like I'm not doing season 2 of Special Forces Fox. And that was a God decision for the most part. And then like the day I'm supposed to fly out to go shoot season 2 of that show, I'm flying here. Seriously, I was flying here for our jump off, for the project we were doing. And then all these other things that want to happen. So like timing, God's timing is impeccable. And that's why I'm like, yo, I know, and I can say this, I'm not ashamed, you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't be where I'm at without God, without, Jesus, his guidance and him, I'd be dead, bro. You know what I mean? But yeah, man, the way it's all orchestrated, you can't make this, it's divine, you know what I'm saying? And that's like, hopefully I'm not,
No, it's a large part of
Yeah,
our
yeah,
story and our
yeah,
company and our
yeah,
podcast and
yeah,
videos. So no, that's perfectly on topic.
yeah,
Okay, so I'm curious,
yeah,
how
yeah,
did you go from, working in the SEALs
yeah,
to getting out
yeah.
and now working in Hollywood? I mean, you worked on, go ahead.
Well, I think a good segue, because this whole story has been you kind of shifting and adapting and
Yeah.
evolving into these different roles.
Yeah.
So in the evolution to, writer, director, producer, actor, all that stuff, what was it about this human intelligence
Yeah.
that because that's intriguing. That
Yeah.
sounds like you're having to put on different masks, different
Oh,
roles,
yeah.
be different people. You're essentially becoming an actor,
Yeah.
which is
100%.
what you now do.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit
Yeah,
about
man.
what
It
you
was
did?
that world was. It's a different world, man. It's a cool world. You know what I mean? Go downrange. As soon as you get downrange, regardless of what pump I was on, first thing you do is you do what's called a turnover. So all of the sources that have been, and when we say sources in the agency, they call them assets, and in the policing world, they call informants, right? So you get these sources. You sit in on a meeting, kind of get a feel for them, get to learn them a little bit, right? And then you decide which ones you're going to keep based off of based off their past performance, but also based off of your general assessment and your personality. Who's going to get what? So who's going to be running what source? And then from there you start building relationship, building rapport with them, finding a way in, and then tasking them. And doing stuff, and that was a big part. I got to live the best of both worlds, I always say, because I got to be on the intelligence side, but then also helping build those intelligence packages. A lot of people don't realize this, especially people who are not pro-military. They get the idea that's oh no, you guys are just mindless freaking killers. You just get told, hey, go get that guy, and it's yo, it's not that simple at all. Period. Even when you meet with a source and you collect intelligence, that information has to be vetted against 2-3 other pieces of information. Whether it's SIGINT, whether it's another source, whether it's it's from having listen in on a conversation, whether it's something that was pulled from an interrogation or bad guy. There's no opping happening unless stuff has gotten vetted. Video footage, ISR footage of a dude freaking sending a kid to go, blow up, some troops or blow up a mosque or whatever the case may be. It all has to be vetted. And so what I was doing was a part of a bigger picture. And then after that bigger picture had been painted, now it's take off the nice clothes, put on the kit, put on the, get the M4 with the suppress, all that nods, and go kick down doors and get bad guys. So that was the process. And I had to become a chameleon. As a matter of fact, I had to, again, like we were talking about, everything happens for a reason. Growing up in the Bronx, taught. It was so interesting because when I got to school and they were teaching us certain things, and I was oh, I used to do that. But now here's the title of what that was, or here's the term for what that was, but I was already doing it.
On a professional level now.
On a professional level. You know what I mean? And so, another thing that Bronx helped me do was help me with, which I didn't know was preparing me for this job, was how do you bend into what you have to bend in order for somebody to be open because it's not as simple as yo, tell me what a bad guy is, or tell me how many guns he has. It's not like that. You gotta build that rapport and get in a way. And I remember, dude, when I got in the country one time, I realized, these dudes in this particular country, they watch freaking American comedies. They watched freaking Eddie Murphy, and Chris Tucker and all that other stuff. And so, and how I learned that was I went into a meeting and, I just naturally, smile, tried to be warm and smile when I went in. And one of the sources was Eddie Murphy? Ah! Eddie Murphy. Eddie. Like I couldn't tell what he was saying because my interpreter was interpreting for me. And he's saying you look like Eddie Murphy, and so he was laughing. And so I was like, huh. So a light went off my head. Okay, that's the common ground I build. So I played that up. I was like, yeah, man. I started acting like Eddie Murphy and Chris Tucker and Martin Lawrence. I'd be like, yeah, man, what's up? And they would just laugh and laugh and to like somebody on the outside who that looks stupid, but in reality, I'm making them comfortable. I'm building that common ground, making them smile. And then after we banter back and forth a little bit and joke, now they're comfortable. And I'm like, so tell me about, so-and-so, what's going on? Oh, you really want, yeah, tell me. And then we build from there. And then if I got to get serious with certain things, I get serious. You know what I mean? But that came from growing up in the Bronx, now I put it tight, and that's shifting into chameleon. There were some guys where I could be that through and through, and I'd get everything that I needed. There were other guys where I couldn't be that through and through. Maybe use that to break the ice, and then and then get serious. And then there were guys I know like weren't having that, and then there were guys where I know, based off of growing up in the streets, that this cat is not who he says he is. He's a double agent. He's working for Jaish, or he's working for Al Qaeda, or he's working for Era, and he's trying to feed me bad information so he can set up the boys. You know what I mean? And then I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna come out and say, pull out a gun and be like, you're this and that. I'm be like, oh no, I'll play your game. You know what I mean? I'm gonna take whatever you say, divide it by 2. Now then I'm gonna start vetting that information against whoever, and then I'm gonna use your foolishness, and I'm gonna put a bird overhead, track you back to wherever, see what you're talking, and then we're gonna work it like that, and we're gonna still be cool. You're gonna think we cool, but I know what's up. So that was the world, man. It's a very interesting, but I was prepared for that world. You know what I'm saying? And it was different because you would get less than 1% of SEALs are African American. Less than 1%. I mean, the class, I was the only black dude who graduated in my class. So it's not that many of us anyway. And then when you get into the intelligence side of things, that number is even smaller. So how that benefited me was most of these dudes ain't never seen a black dude in person, period. Right? Yeah. So that's already like, that to them, I'm like an alien. They're like, I want to know more about this cat. You know what I'm saying?
You could get that same experience in Western Kentucky.
Yeah, I'm sure. Sure, man. Yeah. And so, but yeah, that was the world, man. And it was cool, and got to do a lot of cool things and work with cool people and just do things that I never thought I would be able to do. And like, being on helos and inserting it. I mean, I remember I was talking to a buddy about it yesterday, I think, or the day before, talking about my injuries and stuff. And actually, no, last night. Yeah, last night we were talking, not last night, but the night before when I was in Dallas, and we were talking about injuries. And I was telling him this mission where we were, it was a DA, we were going after a big dude, took a while to build intelligence on this guy. And he lived in just think of the projects, like a lot of buildings and like, alleyways and all of that, but it's like kind of walled off, like the project, gated off, whatever the case may be. And in those projects are all these bad guys. Like that essentially answer to this one dude, and our task was to get this one dude. And so we typically didn't. We had QRF, but we never used QRF in the sense that, or at least on this particular deployment, we didn't use QRF in the sense that they would go on a hop with us, right? And we would use them in the sense that, like, hey, you're back over here. On a helo pad, stuff pops off. You're heloing or whatever way you're gonna insert, but because of how hairy this particular op was, if this is the projects right here, then, and this is like, not to scale, but this is the base over here, then our QRF followed us to like right here.
Gotcha. You were anticipating something.
Well, the intel was, if you guys get in a firefight, no way you're winning. Our ground force was like 10 dudes. Our vehicle, we had 2, 4, 6 operators in the vehicles and the MRAPs, right? And then you had maybe like 10, maybe 11. If our TISR guy maybe add like 11, 12 guys, and 10 guys ain't gonna win a firefight against whole compound of dudes.
So are you
120
trying to get in
dudes.
there like incog? Like,
Yeah, so
okay.
like 2 in the morning. You know what I mean? 2 in the morning. So we get in, we patrol in, we drop off because we didn't want vehicles to wake dudes up. Patrol in, get to the house, and the intel matched up. I didn't bring the source on this op with me. Intel matched up, get to the house, dude's in there. Not only is he in there, so we wrap him up, which we was a capture kill op, but we needed him alive because he had a lot of other intel. But he had like computers and all of this freaking stuff, dude. And intel, like based off my source handling and other stuff that we would vet against each other, we knew that. We knew that this dude was like a bastion of, information, computers, drives, all of this stuff. And get the sea bag, put all of that stuff in the sea
How are you
bag.
guys conducting SSE when the whole world could come down on you in a compound?
It's not, we're quiet. It's slow as smooth as fast. Everything's at night.
Are you taking all the computers, or are you?
Everything that we could take.
Oh my gosh.
We brought sea bags, like the Green Navy sea bags, on this op with us.
So you're taking duffel bags of computers
because we
out.
knew that he had intel, so we anticipated that. Again, this all goes back to human, and not just relying on human, but vetting that information and everything checked out. This guy's location that he would be, because a lot of bad guys would go out, they don't have it for one place. I mean, they got multiple places because they trying to, not get caught. And so, so intel checked out as far as him being at this location. Intel on that night. Intel checked out as far as him having tons of computers and stuff on target. And then, intel checked out as far as like, there's a lot of bad guys on target and we need to bring the QRF. And so anyway, we get in there, get everything bagged up, all under the cover of darkness, all super silent. As soon as we saw him in the bed, wrap him up, you know what I mean? Tie up his goons, whatever.
You guys hop in the wall to the compound?
No, break in. Yeah, breach her up, man. Without blowing the door. Without blowing the door. I've done an op where I had to climb up, and that's a kick in the nuts when you have all that gear, you know what I'm saying? That's why my neck and back and everything's all jacked up now. And dude, we get off target as soon as we exfil from his house. We're moving down the street, lights start coming on. So literally, I'm running down the street. As soon as I start running, the sea bag goes like all computers in it. Because sea bags aren't stablest thing. Everything shifts like this. My whole body goes like this. So I'm literally running down the street. As a matter of fact, Brian was on this op.
Oh, no way.
You remember, you guys heard of Brian who played Thane? He was on this op with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm running down the street like this, you know what I mean? And lights wake and I'm sprinting, and then vehicles roll up, boom, jump in, boogie out with the bad guy and all that stuff. But that's an example of why I'm talking about unique issues and other medical issues off camera, but that's why I'm paying a man now, but that's like how it all happens. There is a human element, there's an intelligence element of it. We're not blind fools that just go after whoever we got. I've seen bad dudes do bad stuff and weeks, months beforehand, and then go after the cat, verified. So yeah, man, that was the gig, and
The intel drives the op, and you got to be on both.
Yeah, got to be on both ends of it and learn a lot. And then again, all of that stuff prepared me for what I do now. And even like I don't consider myself an actor. I have no desire to act. I act in movies, but for me, acting is my film school. But why I think I've been able to have a steady job in acting is because I had to do that in the teams. You know what I mean? Yeah, life or death. Why I have a steady job as a writer and writing screenplays and books and stuff like that is because I got that experience from my mom and then from the teams and then now, and so many things translate smoothly for me, as far as what I do now as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, as an author, as even working in a nonprofit space and doing certain things that I do in the human trafficking space and other spaces that I operate in.
Is there anything you're not doing right now?
I don't do wild animals, and I don't do outer space.
Okay. All right.
That's smart.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I added a new one, and I don't do submersible submarines,
Oh, that's based on current events. That's wise.
Yeah.
especially ones that are jerry rigged together.
Yeah, exactly.
So coming out of at what point did you realize, okay, I'm going to set this chapter of my life aside. The SEALs are going to be my past. I'm going to move into this new venture. Like what?
Yeah, so 2015, I got out in 2016, 2015, 2014, my first son was born. And then 2015, my second son was born. And then like I was on what's called shore duty. And then so I was 2016, January 8th, 2016, my contract was up. And I kind of had to make a decision. Do I platoon back up, go through a workup, which I'm gone most of the time during workup anyway, and then go do a platoon, or do I get out? And for me, it was like, I'm gonna get out, because my dad, having died when I was 5, having a father die when I was 5, I wanted to be home with my boys. I wasn't fearful of death. Once I signed up and said I'll join the Navy, I already kind of gave up. And then once I signed up and said I'll go to BUD/S to be a SEAL, I've already given up the fear of death. So it wasn't a fear of death. It was just the fear of being absent and not present in the lives of my kids, especially in those pivotal years, those early years, because you only get one. I mean, you guys know as fathers, you only get one shot with your kid at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, you're never going to get that back. And so that was the main driving force. And when I got out, I wasn't trying to go into Hollywood. I wasn't trying to go into the space of storytelling at all. I was actually, I had finished my bachelor's, I want to say in 2015. And then I rolled right into my master's in business. And I was doing that because my brother-in-law, he's a very successful entrepreneur, multimillionaire, and he would hire me to consult with his company and with his buddies' companies and stuff. So I didn't want to, I was taking special operations principles that translate to business and kind of teaching those principles to very successful, wealthy entrepreneurs. And I didn't want to just rely on I was a team guy, I was a SEAL, so listen to me. I wanted to have the educational theory and the business theory along with it, but then I also wanted to be running a business as well, so that when I'm speaking to these companies, I'm speaking from the experience of a guy who actually runs a business and has the education. And oh, by the way, I was a team guy. That's just a part of it. And so I was doing that, getting my master's and doing consulting, and then got out in January 2016. And then in May of 2016, I got hit up to work on Transformers. And man, it was just supposed to be one day as like a consultant / actor. And Bay, who again, can't make this up. Same guy whose 2 films inspired me to, be a hero. I say that in air quotes, and then inspired me to be a SEAL. This is the same guy whose team hit me up and said, hey, you want to work on You can't make this up, bro.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
You ever told him that?
I wrote him a
okay.
letter. Dude, he has a letter on it. If you go to Michael Bay website, or his social website and or social media, you'll see he posted the letter to his website. Because after I finished the film, I was like, yo, man, I'm not trying to get anything from you. I just want you to know that your films inspired me and changed the trajectory of my life. And I just want you to know that, it was a blessing working with you. I don't want nothing from you. And so he knows the whole story. And so was supposed to do 1 day on Transformers. 1 day turned into 3 weeks. Then 3 weeks turned into 6 months on the film. And then filmed in Michigan, Arizona, LA, London, Wales. And then from there is when I was just like, all right, I think this is what I want to do. Like I got introduced to storytelling, and I saw how films, I already kind of had, how it's like, you're aware that films have an impact, but it doesn't really click until like you get in it, and then you're like, oh, like, well, not films, but like anything in general, you know what I mean? Then like you get involved and you're like, oh, wow, like this is how a film starts, with a script, and this is how you can influence, and then this is how a film is shot. And then it was through that process I was like, dude, I want to be a filmmaker. You know what I mean? I want to do this full time. I want to take everything that I've learned from the teams and life in general and do this.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we could take your story, for example.
Yeah.
You were able to look at The Rock and be influenced by SEALs.
Yep.
And today,
Yep.
Drew and I are aware that media as a whole
Yep.
can influence people.
100%.
So one thing that we've seen that has shifted positively, go back to 80s action movies, some gunplay may not be represented in good light, you know? Or it may not be very accurate and demonstrate like, actually, that's not how that gun works. You need to rock an AK mag in and you need to rack the charging handle. You can't just throw a new mag in and keep shooting if it goes dry.
Yeah.
Little things like that turn into people who watch movies, or let's take young boys, young girls too, but people who watch movies at an age and find an interest and a fascination can learn so much from that.
Yeah.
Even the concept that good guys with a gun
Yeah.
can have a positive impact on the world
100%.
when that tool is used appropriately.
Yeah.
Bad guys with a gun can do horrible things.
Yeah.
The gun itself is not, it's an inherent object.
100%.
It is a deadly tool.
Yeah.
But that story in and of itself can be shared across all of Hollywood.
Yeah.
And you now are someone who is influencing the world in a positive way through more than just a firearm. Granted, that's the world that we're from.
Yeah.
How many, I'm getting to a question. How many people on a big production does it take to pull off, yep, that's the kit and gear that we're going to use. This is the movement, the sequence that we're going to have these characters, these actors flow through. This is how the guns are going to be actually moved around and worked with. These bad guys are going to use these guns. These good guys are going to use those guns. Because a lot of people can point fingers and say, well, whoever worked on that movie, they clearly don't know guns.
Yeah.
And I get the sense there's more than one person calling the shots on how the entire production is going to unfold.
Yeah, so, first it always starts with the director, right? So the director is the one that's making the choice to hire, the director and the producer for the most part are making the choice, like, am I going to hire a consultant? Am I going to hire somebody that, is an expertise in this space or not? For example, like for my organ harvesting film, I don't know anything about surgery, you know what I mean? Performing heart surgery, right? So, and I can't afford to shoot it as real as possible because that's going to require a lot of special effects. So what am I going to do? I'm going to hire, as a director, I'm going to make the choice to hire an actual heart surgeon to come and talk me through, read the script and talk me through certain things and talk to me through certain angles I could shoot from so it looks like the person is doing surgery and so on and so forth. So it kind of starts with the director and the producer. And then from there, a consultant. For some films like Plane, there was a main consultant on that film, and that was I won't mention his name, but he was a former Tier 1 SEAL, and then myself, as a backup, you know what I mean? And then you have armorers, typically the armorers, for the most part, most of them don't have military experience for the most part, but they have been around a lot of military trained people and they know weapons inside and out and they're really good at what they do. And they're like the safety barrier for the most part. They're the ones they're handing the gun to the actor, or in our cases, like they're handing the gun to us and making sure the weapons on safe and so on and so forth. And so typically you have about one, depending on the production, how big it is, like 1 to 2 armors. Then you have a props master. So the props master and that props master definitely has like an assistant, somebody working with him or her. And that props master handles all of the kit, the gear, the radios, the web belt, all of the stuff that's necessary to make sure it looks right. And the consultant typically works with the prop master and the armor. Like, hey, here's what the script says as it relates to a gun. Like, here's the gun that the script says supposed to be in the film. It's not realistic. Do you have this type of gun? Yeah, I can get that type of gun. Okay, cool. Or I can't get that type of gun, but I can get something close. Okay, cool. And then same thing with the props master. Like on Plane, like I work with the props master to help build out some of the web gear and some of the stuff because, the stuff that she had ordered was like kit from like the 80s. It's like, know if that's going to work here. You know what I mean? And so, because everything had been ordered, we had to just kind of like, and we didn't have time because we were already in production. Well, production had already started. We had scenes we had to shoot the next day. Like we had to go to the local, whatever, 511 gear shop and just buy what we can get and, jerry rig stuff together to make it happen. So, I would say the director, the consultant, props masters, and the armor, those are the people that make a production happen. And then even training, like for Six Underground, when I worked on Six Underground with Netflix, like, Bay hit me up and was like, yo, dude, I want you to help. I want you to be the lead consultant on this. So I worked with before we even got out to set, we were at Terran Tactical with a bunch of the actors, and we were going over weapon safety, and we were using live ammo. So weapon safety, shooting and moving, you know what I mean? Like for one of the actors that was playing this, sniper, like, we were going through sniper stuff with him so that he looked real and authentic when he was on camera. And we trained with them out there for and then we also did PT stuff with them. So we trained with them for like a week and a half out in Terran Tactical. So that way, when we got to set, we weren't having to like start from scratch. You know what I mean? Similar to what we did on the Chameleon short, where we didn't have as much time, but we got some guys out there and talked through and walked through some stuff with them, so that way we can minimize having to do multiple takes when it got to set. So that's kind of how it all
That makes sense.
comes together.
It's pretty cool.
crazy.
Did I ever tell you about how I unofficially consulted on Extraction 2?
No, tell me about it.
Real quick.
Yeah.
So an email came in, a company I was working for at the time.
Yeah.
They got hit up to the prop master of the armor wanted to buy holsters for very specific guns, like suppressed guns and stuff like that. And their original order list had like, we need like 10 holsters for these actors, good guys, bad guys. And I was like, well, those holsters aren't going to look right. They're not going to work. Let's do this instead. And also, it's going to cost you more money, but you need to add on these thigh straps to the order so that when an actor actually draws the pistol, it doesn't flap away from his body. I'm like, if you have this in the movie and you don't have the thigh straps on, and if you ever draw your weapon, people are going to see it, or you're going to have to redo the take. I'm like, and also a thigh strap. If you put a thigh strap on Hemsworth, it's going to make his butt pop more on screen. And I got an email back. It was just like, yeah, we'll take the thigh straps. And then when the movie came out, I saw it and I was like, yes, you used it. You used it.
Awesome.
But
That's awesome. There you go, man. Did they throw you in the credits?
Oh, no, that's fine. No, whoever made the decision ultimately made the right call, but I'm glad they maybe listened to me a little bit.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
But that whole process is so fascinating.
Yeah,
all the things that have to come together, and like it seems like even you could plan it out, to the nines, and then still it takes a couple people who are just like the nerds about the details coming along and just like tweaking everything and then getting it all perfect.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's what I mean. But at the end of the day, there's so much content out there that the differentiator now is authenticity. People are a lot smarter now, so they're able to read between what's like, man, this is fake and dumb versus like, this is real and raw and authentic. And I think that, having right consulting and having people with experience in whatever background the film is portraying, that's going to just help make it real and authentic, and that's going to draw an audience. You know what I mean? And look at Extraction. Extraction, even part one. That like was a huge draw because the movements and everything looked cool and spot on. Like even like some of this, talking about Jack Ryan, and Terminal List. Why are those shows successful? Even Succession stuff doesn't have to do with guns, stuff like that. Why is it? Because it reads as real and authentic, and that's my model. Like on my production company's Instagram page, that's what we have in the title, where I can't remember it verbatim, but it's somewhere along the lines of like authentic company that's sole purpose is to create authentic story, to tell authentic stories in an authentic way. Right. And that's kind of how Chameleon came about. Chameleon for me is about like, hey, I wanted a grounded character doing grounded things, but in a world that doesn't exist, but in a world where people can read and pick it up and be like, oh, crap, like this is cool. Like, you know what I mean? Reads real, this reads authentic. So that's my whole goal as it relates to storytelling.
Well, you've told one story in the form of a video on YouTube
Yeah.
about organ harvesting.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. I'm not just trying to blow you up or anything like that, but it was shot really well. The production value was absolutely there, but the story was great, and it was told in such a. If someone's listening to this and you haven't watched it, definitely go and watch it. But it's unconventional storytelling method in terms of like your timelines, but it also just makes it like everyone, whether they know it or not, kind of has a part in it.
Yeah.
And that like, where did your inspiration for that film come from? Like, what got you started down that road? Because we're talking about Hollywood and influencing a ton of people and making an impact on people. Well, stuff like that movie that you made absolutely does.
Yeah, man. I mean, it started with, thanks, man. It started with working in the human trafficking space, volunteering with different human trafficking nonprofits after I got out and not knowing anything about human trafficking. And in short, I ended up going down to South America with not South America, but Dominican Republic to be exact, with a human trafficking nonprofit that employs former special operations guys and former agency guys. And we were in this particular slum where the parents would sell their daughters to traffickers in the north. And then the traffickers would sell the girls for sex to Americans and other Westerners who would come out. And we're talking 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old girls. We're not talking like 17, 18. We're talking like young little girls. And so when we were in this slum, our specific mission was to kind of, educate the parents a little bit more, try to provide them with resources, and just trying to get them out of doing what they're doing. And kind of show them, hey, listen, like what's happening to your girls is not just for the moment. And we understand you guys are desperate, but you're screwing them up for the rest of their lives. You know what I mean? And so I just remember I've always been pretty good at keeping my composure, and especially when it comes to work. But I was just so disgusted. And our guide noticed my frustration and anger. And he pulled me aside because he knew that I wouldn't be able to properly do my job if I didn't gain some a better understanding of what's going on. And so he pulled me into this chapel. It just so happens that there was a funeral service in this chapel, and the chapel had to be no bigger than the size of 2 toilet stalls. And at the end of the chapel was a 6-month-old dead baby in a casket. And he explained to me that the baby died because the mother's breast milk ran out because she wasn't getting enough food and sustenance. So she mixed formula with the local water, and that's what ultimately killed the baby, the 6-month-old baby. And so what he was trying to explain to me, and on top of that, was that, hey, this is their plight. It all comes down to desperation to them. He was just trying to help me get inside their mind a little bit, to move away from judgment and to kind of move into not, and don't want to use the word empathy, because how can you ever empathize with this, but just a better understanding as to why, so that I could better speak to these guys and communicate to these parents. And essentially what he was saying was that, it's all about desperation. For them, it's either they sell their one daughter and have food and water and other things for their other kids, or they don't, and all their kids die. And again, that didn't justify it for me, but that helped me to understand a little bit more so that I could be more effective in doing my job. And when I got back from that trip, I landed in Miami, and I had all these voicemails. Not all, but I had a couple of voicemails and text messages from Mike Case. Mike Case is Michael Bay's producing partner. He was like, hey, Remi, Michael Bay is starting his next movie, 6 Underground, and he's been trying to get a hold of you because we want you to start working with the actors now. And I agreed to the job, but when I got off the phone, that was kind of when like the two worlds collided, in my mind. It was just like, okay, film, TV, human trafficking, bringing it together, make more of an impact, because I can go down to DR or, Venezuela or Colombia, wherever the case may be, Middle East, wherever, and carry out these rescue missions or these training missions or whatever the case may be, and rescue maybe 10, 20 kids. But, the statistics are really high as it relates to the number of kids. It's like 2 million kids every year are, and the number may be more. That's just what we can tell. We're not even counting, the other forms of human trafficking. Like, because when people hear human trafficking, they just think of, sex trafficking, but it's organ harvesting, it's labor, it's forced marriage, it's blood trafficking. It's even a recent story that came out of Harvard University where these people, this husband and wife that worked at this morgue, they were trafficking body parts, of people who died. They were supposed to like help get these people to their funeral, and some people were supposed to be, even babies were supposed to be, cremated, but instead their parts and some are being sold on the black market. And it was a very intricate service. And so for me, it was like I wanted to be able to. The idea just came to me to have a bigger impact instead of just going on these trips and have an impact that's going to influence as many people, because it's a global issue which requires a global response. And that was kind of how the film came about. And the reason why I focus more on organ harvesting again is because so many people don't focus on organ harvest because they don't know how to. You know what I mean? Like, it's easier to focus on sex trafficking because you often have the victims who survive. You know what I mean? And can tell their story. But organ harvesting, in some cases, a lot of cases, the victims don't survive, And so that was kind of how the Unexpected film came about. I just wanted to, and I picked actual events.
Yeah, I didn't even know about that event until I watched that.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, the Yazidis. A lot of people don't know about the Yazidis genocide. I think it was 2014, 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. And when Americans kind of pulled out, ISIS came into the north and essentially massacred all the men, Yazidis men, took the women and kids. Girls were used for sex trafficking, organ harvesting, and labor and other horrible things. And the UN actually recognized it as a genocide around 2000, for the first time, like after, I think it was like a year or two after it happened, finally recognized it as a modern day genocide.
Oh my God.
It just popped into my head how you told that story. And I don't know if people watch this. It's only 32 minutes long. So people can quickly figure this out for themselves. But you know how in America, everyone's always like, like we make fun of you because you're from Portland, because anytime you guys go into a restaurant and you order a burger, you're like, oh, what was the name of the cow? Where did it come from? What did it eat?
Thank you.
Now it's a pretty crude comparison, but it's accurate. You tell the story as from when someone hits order, essentially on I want a heart or a liver or a split or whatever it is. You tell the story of farm to table. Which is brutal. So many people, I had no idea what that process looked like.
It's very intricate, and it's very
so many moving parts.
A lot of moving parts, a lot of intelligent people involved. You know what I mean? As a matter of fact, Cairo, Egypt is considered, or was considered a number of years ago, the organ harvesting capital of the world. And there was a multi-million-dollar organ harvesting bust by the Egyptian government. And of the 60 people that were taken down, the majority of them, 45 of them, were doctors and nurses. So when it comes to organ harvesting, you're not dealing with idiots. Right. Or you can't be, because some of these people performing surgery.
Well, I think a lot of people think that. They think, oh, they're gangs or they're like terrorists. It's like, no, these are some of the tip of the spear, most intelligent people. And they've worked out the math, and it's down to a science.
And even in some cases too, like, there's an interview on my YouTube channel where the film is, and sometimes you get doctors and nurses who are pretty much get a gun put to their head and their family's lives threatened, and say, hey, you perform the surgery, you do X, Y, and Z, or you're dead. So and that was one of the facets of it that I kind of tried to show in the short with the Dr. Lugo and him, like what you told me that I was a dead person was on the road. You didn't tell. And so there's so many different facets and avenues, and it's so intricate, but it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. You know what I mean? Organ harvest, not just the organ harvesting part of human trafficking. Human trafficking globally is about $150 billion industry. You know what I mean? And so it's a global issue. And I could go on for days and days about how, the stories and stuff, but it's something that has to be dealt with, and that was why I made the short. And when I made the short, I didn't anticipate for it to be a big feature film, but now it's going to be a bigger feature film with stars and $35 million budget and big money. But that's good, because now, especially with the success of Sound of Freedom, you know, now more people can be aware and conscious, because I hate how it's been so politicized, and it's just been so, well, it's QAnon this and this, and it's like, yeah, okay, I can't speak for them or what they put out, what they say, but I could tell you that this is some real horrific stuff, you know. And
again, if people haven't caught on to it yet, the YouTube video is Unexpected, and we'll make sure we put it in the description of this video, because it's a pretty serious reality that's actually happening.
And it was well done.
Thank you, brother.
Like there's so much stuff. I mean, one of the phrases that we go back to is kind of one of the founding principles of our company is excellence demands attention. And if you can do something well, which I think your film does, I think Sound of Freedom probably did too. If you can do something well, it will get people's attention.
It will rise.
And so many times these stories or so many people's efforts go into making something that's kind of lackluster, and it almost delegitimizes the topic they're talking about, because they didn't do it to a high standard. So the fact that Unexpected did it to a high standard, the more that can be done by the more people, the more that drum just keeps on getting beat. I can't see it any other way where we start to actually fix this problem unless it almost starts with movies. I know it sounds crazy, but it almost has to have film and stories to take that first step for everyone. So
because most people won't read a news article or watch the news about it or read a book about it, but they will sit around and watch a film and then hopefully want to do something about it.
By it.
It makes you feel. It hits that sense that just writing can do that, but like a news story, it's like, I'm kind of detached from that. But if someone can make me feel something and see it, and like it be a part of me, you can't get away from that.
1,000%.
So
well, Remi, we're coming up on 3 hours. I know we could probably do another 3 hours. You have a book coming out. We mentioned it at the intro here, but Chameleon, July 25th.
July 25th.
Right
yes,
on.
Sir.
Cool.
Yes, sir.
my childhood best friend's birthday.
Okay.
A good day. That's a good day. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we're gonna keep grinding away and get this short film wrapped up. And
Where can people find you?
I got a unique name, so it works out. Remi Adeleke on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, wherever. And they can get the book wherever books are sold. Then.
Awesome. And it is being recommended by Jack Carr and Brad Thor for all of you. I'm almost done with all of his books. I've only got 3 left.
Which one, Jack or Brad?
Brad.
Okay.
Oh, I get Jack's the moment, like the day of, I go through them. But also you have another book, Transformed.
Transform, my memoir,
That was, if you want to hear more about his full story, like the details, it's in that book. You can get it on Amazon, wherever. So.
And that's going to be a movie.
Good.
Can you give any details about it? Who's going to be in?
Just I can't mention the studio yet because it's not going to get announced until after the writer's strike, but it's going to be epic. I already finished the screenplay, and it's going to be cool, man.
Good.
We're so excited about it. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for everything. Thank you for being who you are, for spending time with us. We love you, man, and
love you guys too, and just want to give some love to Charles and Chad. Appreciate you guys, and Steve, and and all you guys too, man. Thank you guys for having me on. It's always a blessing to connect, and look forward to doing many more projects and crushing it with you guys, man.
Love it too.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right, God bless.
You as well.
Yeah.